owner of the US Mega Farmest video is Puremont para Intratnamiento Wino Infringe de Recos de Autor Aniles. Los Direcos de la Novela y la Imagen son del autor original, no reclamamos propiedad. No te gusta esperar y quieres escuchar este fanfic completo ahora? Suscríbete a nuestro Patreon, donde encontrarás los mejores fanfics. Chapter 151 Channel. Shrugging his shoulders, Kinzu knew that she couldn't go, but he had to say hello, lest she think he was a person who would not admit his duty after pulling up his pants. Raising his eyebrows proudly, Kinzu looked at Onid, who was still frowning slightly, and said with a smile, "In this case, you can only rest at home." "Well, then you should be careful on the road." Onid nodded. She just wanted to go back and have a good sleep now. She was really tired. Looking at her tired face, Kinzu said with some heartache, "I will help you go back to the room to rest. Go to bed early today." Seeing her nodded. So Kinzu got up and helped her back to the bedroom. After watching her fall asleep, he kissed her gently on the face, and then closed the door and returned to the living room. At this time, Mobika had cleaned up the restaurant, and Kinzu came to her side. He smiled and said, "I didn't know you could do housework." After washing his hands in the sink, Mobika wiped his hands gently with a dry towel, shrugged helplessly, and said with a smile, "This is all because of Joseph. When I was a child, he didn't let my mother do housework. He always used some pocket money to tempt me to do housework. Now, I'm used to it." Hilly. Kinzu laughed softly when he heard it. He didn't expect that this was the reason. But it's not bad. Nowadays, whether it's abroad or at home, fewer and fewer young and beautiful girls are willing to do housework. At this time, Mobika, who had finished cleaning the restaurant and the kitchen, turned around and looked at Kinzu, who was standing behind him with his arms folded, and asked, "Clean, when are we leaving?" Kinzu looked at the time. It was only half an hour before the agreed time, and he nodded and said, "Well, it's almost time to leave. By the way, do you have a suitable dress?" At this time, Kinzu suddenly remembered that he hadn't prepared a dress for Mobika yet. "Well, yes, but at home." Mobika also reacted at this time. Now she was not at home. She came to New York this time only to bring some clothes for changing. "Let's go. It's not too late. I remember there is a big shopping mall not far away. Let's go and have a look." Kinzu stood up and sorted out his clothes. He remembered that he passed by a big shopping mall when he came here. It seemed to be not far away. Okay. Mobika agreed, went back to the room and said hello to Onid, and then went downstairs with Kinzu. After Mobika got in the car and fastened his seatbelt, Kinzu smiled and said, "Fortunately, this is New York. Luxury stores are the most abundant. Otherwise, it would be a bit troublesome today. I didn't expect this. I thought I was at home." Mobika was also a little embarrassed. Kinzu told her at the beginning that he would attend a cocktail party in the evening, but she didn't think about it. "It's okay, I didn't think it through. Well, there's a big mall in front. Let's go take a look." Just after turning the night the 15th around an intersection in front, Kinzu saw a large mall with neon lights flashing not far away. After driving the car over and finding a place to park, Kinzu took Mobika's hand and walked directly inside. He stopped a salesman and asked directly, "Hello, excuse me, which floor is the best women's clothing store here? What kind of dress do you want?" The white girl who was stopped by Kinzu was blonde and blue-eyed, with a few freckles on her face. After hearing this, she looked at Mobika with some envy, and then said to Kinzu respectfully, "Hello, sir, the third floor is the women's clothing area. There are basically all the famous women's clothing stores in the world. You can go and have a look." "Thank you." After thanking him, Kinzu didn't even look at the envious foreigner, and took Mobika to the third floor. Arriving at the third floor, Kinzu walked around the mall, looking at the numerous stores and the dazzling array of evening dresses, and felt overwhelmed. There were not many that he had heard of. When he was about to find one at random, Kinzu suddenly found a very familiar logo. After thinking for a while, he remembered that it was the logo of a very famous luxury brand in China. Channel, well, then let's go with this one." After looking at so many, Kinzu had only heard of this one, so he looked at Mobika and asked her opinion. This is too expensive, right?" Mobika, who had been in a daze since being pulled to the third floor by Kinzu, looked at the familiar logo in front of her, swallowed her saliva, and stammered. Since there was no objection, it was okay. Kinzu did not answer the question about whether it was expensive or not, but took her little hand and walked directly into the store. Welcome to Channel. As soon as they entered the store, two foreign saleswomen wearing suits and dressed very seductively took the initiative to come forward and greeted them warmly. Their eyesight is not comparable to that of ordinary people. They had already seen through the two people's clothes before Kinzu entered the store. Although the beautiful girl next to him was only dressed in ordinary clothes, the Asian in front of him was wearing top brands. It seems that what the store manager said is very right, Asians are all local tyrants. Kinzu didn't know the complaints of the two foreign salesmen in their hearts. He nodded at the two and said directly, "Please help this lady pick an evening dress. It must be the best. We're in a hurry. Please hurry up." The two ignored them and answered in unison, "Okay, sirs, please wait a moment." After that, the two went straight inside and took out a pure white dress. Looking at the pure white off-shoulder dress, he pouted at Mobuka and motioned her to go over and try it on. Since he was already in, Mobuka was no longer polite, since Kinzu was a wealthy man anyway. He took the dress and, under the guidance of a salesperson, went to the fitting room to try it on. He waited for about 2 or 3 minutes. The tightly closed fitting room door slowly opened from the inside. A graceful white figure slowly walked out. Thanks to Fengxia AI. The lights on the road. The 2 big rewards, and the recommendation votes of the book Friends, thank you. Chapter 152 Ocean Star. How is it? Clean, is it okay? Looking at Kinzu's fiery eyes, Mobuka proudly straightened her plump breasts and asked proudly. Hearing this, Kinzu nodded fiercely, okay, it's great. However, after looking Mobuka up and down for a while, Kinzu always felt that something was missing. It was not until he saw Mobuka's fair neck that Kinzu realized, necklace. How can an evening dress be worn without jewelry? Dear, I think you still need a set of jewelry. Kinzu looked at Mobuka, who was looking at herself in the mirror, and said, but is there still time? Mobuka looked at herself carefully for a while and felt that Kinzu was right. But is there enough time? Sir, we have specially matched jewelry here, as well as matching leather bags, shoes, watches, perfumes, a complete set. The salesperson next to them heard the conversation between the two and interrupted in time to introduce. Kinzu's eyes lit up when he heard it, and he said, hurry up and bring it over to try. When the clerk brought the item over, Kinzu signaled Mobuka to go upstairs. At this time, the salesperson next to him introduced with envy, Sir, this channel camellia necklace has been favored by many women since its launch. The camellia, which symbolizes innocence and subtlety, is the iconic design of the channel brand. After a pause, he looked at his colleague who was helping Mobuka put on the necklace, and continued. This channel camellia necklace has a very beautiful meaning, just like a snowy trail that you jump across from a snowy mountain, running smoothly, with the momentum of rushing thousands of miles, and also has a crystal clear and refreshing beauty. Kinzu nodded his head, not knowing whether Mobuka understood it or not, but he didn't understand it anyway. After seeing Mobuka put on the necklace, the salesperson brought over earrings, watches, and bags. When the two walked out of the channel store, Kinzu's card was less than $10,000. He didn't feel anything yet, but Mobuka felt a little distressed. Clean, this is too expensive, and you won't need so much, right? Looking at the clothes she had when she came out, Mobuka said a little embarrassedly. It's okay, let's hurry up, otherwise we'll be late. Kinzu took out his mobile phone and called Dale, telling her to wait for him at the hotel entrance, and then drove towards the hotel. When they arrived at the hotel entrance, Kinzu and the others got out of the car. Looking at Dale, who was coming to meet him, Mobuka greeted her first, Sister Dale. Good evening. Looking at Mobuka in surprise, Dale looked at Kinzu with a weird look, then smiled and nodded at Mobuka, saying, Mobuka, you are here too? Yeah, I'm accompanying Clean to a cocktail party. Mobuka blushed a little at Dale's weird look, and said in a low voice with her hands behind her back. Kinzu was much more shameless. He ignored Dale's strange look, handed her the car keys, and then hugged Mobuka and got into the back seat. After taking the car keys, Dale got into the car and asked, Boss, where are you going? After Kinzu told her an address, he started the car and headed for the destination. She was quite familiar with New York. It took only more than 10 minutes for the night the 15th to stop in front of a pier. There were already quite a few people on the pier, and the most eye-catching thing was the giant cruise ship quietly docked at the pier. Kinzu estimated that the length of the cruise ship was about 120 meters, and the height above the water was as high as 4 or 5 floors. At this time, it was parked quietly at the pier, like an ancient giant beast. It's so big. Mobica, who was holding Kinzu's arm gently, said in amazement. Although she lived in this coastal city, she had never been to the sea. Yes, tonight, we will spend the night here, in the sea. Although Kinzu was also a little shocked, men's thoughts are different from women's after all. At this moment, he has already thought about what will happen at night. On the boat, what kind of experience will it be to do the things you love on the boat? He rolled his eyes helplessly at this guy. Isn't it said that Asian men are very reserved? Why didn't Mobica feel that this man was a little bit reserved? Hey, Clean, you're here. Why don't you go over there? Just as the two were chatting, Douglas's voice came from behind. Kinzu turned his head and saw a middle-aged white man hugging a hot blonde foreign girl who had just got off a Rolls-Royce Phantom. I'm just about to go over there. Kinzu answered with a smile, and walked towards the dock with the two women and Douglas. Kinzu, who was originally going to introduce Mobica to Douglas, saw that this guy didn't ask, and didn't mean to introduce him to the female companion around him, so he had to swallow the words on his lips and continued walking with the others. Arriving at the dock, there were already staff waiting at the door. After seeing the few people, they were respectfully invited to board the ship. Clean, this is a steel giant ship manufactured by our Dutch Industries shipyard. It is called Ocean Star. The entire cruise ship is 127 meters long, 18.8 meters wide, and has a total displacement of more than 80,000 tons. There are more than 300 rooms of various sizes on the ship, restaurants, bars, casinos. All kinds of facilities are available. Walking on the way to the dock, Douglas looked at Kinzu and smiled and introduced the details of the cruise ship to Kinzu. How much does it cost if this cruise ship is customized? Kinzu listened to Douglas's endless introduction and asked curiously. Douglas was silent for a while after hearing this, and then he said quickly in his mind, excluding the interior decoration, the cost is about $60 million. If the decoration is included, it will cost more than $100 million. Kinzu was shocked when he heard this. He always thought he was rich enough, but he didn't expect that anyone who came out could abuse him. Spending $100 million to buy a cruise ship that has no practical value. This is what a rich man does. Soon, the two of them came to the dock together. At this time, there were already quite a few people gathered on the dock. They were all guests invited by Douglas. After looking at the time, Douglas whispered a few words to a middle-aged white man next to him, and then announced loudly that he was ready to board the ship. Clean, let's go up to. Seeing that the number of people was getting smaller and smaller, Douglas said to Kinzu, and then took the lead and walked towards the Ocean Star. Kinzu followed behind with Dale and Mobica, and they soon arrived on the Ocean Star. This is the second update today, and I still didn't make up for yesterday's update. Thank you for the support of the book, friends. Thank you, everyone. Chapter 153, Ocean Star Part 2. Because of Douglas's leadership, Kinzu and his companions boarded the ship without any obstacles, while others still needed to show their invitation letters. When they arrived on the ship, Kinzu realized that he was really amazed. This place that was comparable to the lobby of a 5-star luxury hotel was actually on a ship. What appeared in front of Kinzu was a huge hall similar to the lobby in a shopping mall, covering hundreds of square meters, with extremely luxurious decoration. Kinzu looked up and saw that the hall was about 6 or 7 stories high, much higher than it looked from the outside. Around the hall, there were some small golden lights installed, which illuminated the entire hall with gold and splendor. What attracted Kinzu's eyes the most were the 2 towering columns in the center of the hall. The columns were a bit like the sightseeing elevators in the mall, leading directly to the ceiling of the top floor. As if seeing Kinzu's confusion, Douglas, who had been explaining something to the people next to him after getting on the boat, smiled and introduced. Clean, do you see those 2 buildings? That's right, that's the sightseeing elevator, which goes straight to the top of the boat. As he said that, several people came to the front of the elevator, and someone next to him took the initiative to press the up button, and the elevator door opened directly. Several people got on the elevator one after another. After entering, the person next to him directly pressed the 5th floor. Kinzu then turned around and Douglas smiled and found that this elevator had a total of 6 floors, and the interior of the elevator was actually quite spacious. It didn't seem crowded even if more than a dozen people came in. Soon, the elevator arrived on the 5th floor. Douglas turned his head and smiled and said, Clean, we're here, let's go down. Kinzu nodded, and took the 2 girls to follow him down the elevator. At this time, Douglas introduced them again. Clean, this is the guest room department, and these are the best guest rooms, all of which are sea view suites with balconies. After a pause, several people came to the door of a guest room. Douglas stopped, took 2 room cards from the person next to him and handed them to Kinsey, smiling and saying, "Clean, I hope you can spend a wonderful night here. The banquet will start at 9:30, and the venue is in the banquet hall on the 6th floor. You can just go there when the time comes. I won't accompany you for now." Hearing Douglas say this, Kinsey also quickly said, "Okay, Mr. Doug, then you go and do your work first, I will go there directly later." The courtesy Douglas gave him today already made him feel a little flattered. With so many guests come in, he was the only one who enjoyed his full-time escort service. Looking at the surprise and curiosity in the eyes of some of the guests, Kinsey felt a little overwhelmed, because some of those guests looked very familiar to him, as if there were several Hollywood superstars, and some he often saw on TV and newspapers. Douglas smiled, shook hands with Kinsey, and walked straight to the front with his entourage. After the people walked away, Kinsey inserted the room card. With a beep, the door opened. Entering the room, the first thing that caught everyone's eyes was the huge living room of more than 100 square meters. On one side of the living room was a rectangular leather sofa and a transparent glass coffee table. In the middle of the living room, there was a round reception table, and next to it were several finely carved wooden chairs, which looked particularly tasteful. In a corner of the living room, there was also a pure white piano placed diagonally. Kinsey walked over and took a look. It was a brand he didn't recognize, but judging from the appearance and the fact that it could be placed here, it should be worth a lot. After walking a few steps, Mobica couldn't help but exclaimed, "Clean, this is too extravagant, isn't it a waste to have such a big room on the ship?" Kinsey shrugged his shoulders. He was not surprised by these things now. He smiled and said, "Mobica, you don't understand the life of the rich. For them, there is no such concept as waste or not waste. The truth is to be comfortable." "Oh, is that the case with you too?" Mobica turned her beautiful eyes and stared at Kinsey with a curious look. "No, I hate these extravagant and wasteful behaviors, really." Kinsey sat comfortably on the leather sofa, feeling the comfort, and said to Mobica very comfortably. But she secretly added in her heart, "That was in the past." Mobica curled her lips, looking at Kinsey who was enjoying the leather sofa. She couldn't see that Kinsey hated this kind of waste. "Let's go, Sister Dale, let's go to the bedroom." Ignoring Kinsey who was lying on the sofa, Mobica called Dale, and the two entered the bedroom. "Wow, it's so beautiful." After passing through a cloakroom, the two girls just entered the bedroom, and Mobica couldn't help but exclaimed. Because what caught the eyes of the two girls at this time was a wall made entirely of high-strength glass. From the room, they could clearly see the blue sea outside, which was surging with white waves under the light. After walking a few steps quickly, Mobica didn't have time to look at the layout of the room, and ran straight to the window. The whole person stuck to the window, staring outside. Even Dale was a little fascinated. She had never seen the sea on such a luxury cruise ship. So she slowly approached the glass wall and watched the scenery outside with Mobica. Kinsey heard Mobica's exclamation outside, and didn't dare to neglect it. He quickly got up and rushed to the bedroom. As a result, he saw such a scene as soon as he entered the door. He smiled dumbly, but it was indeed a different feeling to look at the sea on the boat, so he ignored it and began to look at this luxurious sea view suite. The first thing that caught Kinsey's eyes was a luxurious double bed that was 2 meters long. On the bed was a white and soft Simmons mattress, covered with a layer of snow-white cashmere quilt. Kinsey touched his nose, wondering why he was always concerned about the bed first. He quickly moved his eyes away from the bed and looked at the surrounding layout. There was a bedside table, a small sofa, and a computer table with a Pingo ultra-thin desktop computer on it. There was also a bathroom in that bedroom, which seemed to occupy a large area. Kinsey directly pushed open the door of the bathroom and walked in. Before he had time to look at anything else, a huge bathtub that was more than 2 meters long appeared in front of him again. Subconsciously, Kinsey thought of the legendary bath or something. He quickly shook his head to drive some strange thoughts out of his mind, and couldn't help but start to complain. Could this be the legendary having a ghost in one's heart, seeing everything as a ghost? Why does he think wrongly about everything he sees now? Thanks to Fengxi and Concert Boy for their support. Today is the first update. Let me apologize to everyone first. I was too sleepy when I was typing yesterday. I sent it out without checking it. I made a mistake in writing the width and height of the cruise ship. It was a typo. It was not that Leoon wrote it carelessly without checking the information. I hope that book friends can remind Leoon if they see the mistakes. Please be merciful. Chapter 154 Isabella's Swan. However, the problem was solved in the afternoon, so why was he still so hungry? Kinzu was a little confused about himself, and he muttered to himself, was he trying to make up for what he had not enjoyed in the past 20 years? Clean, come and see, there is a balcony here. Oh. I'm coming. Mobuka's shout woke Kinzu up from his fantasy world. He agreed casually and turned to leave the bathroom. When he came to the bedroom, the two girls had opened a door next to the bedroom and came to the balcony. Kinzu also came to this small balcony through the small door. The balcony was not big, only 2 or 3 square meters, but it was enough for the 3 of them to stand. At this time, the sky outside had completely darkened, but under the bright lights of the cruise ship, the night view looked even more beautiful. At this moment, the Ocean Star cruise ship issued a long whistle and began to move slowly. Feeling the cruise ship start smoothly, and when it slowly sailed away from the dock, Kinzu raised his wrist to check the time and said, "It's almost time, let's get ready and go." Seeing the two nodded, Kinzu took them back to the bedroom. After closing the small door again, they packed their clothes and walked towards the banquet hall together. Because Dale came here as a bodyguard this time, when she arrived at the door of the banquet hall, she followed the waiter to the small hall on the side. For her, it was very boring to attend such a party, so before coming, she had already declared that she would not accompany Kinzu to suffer. Kinzu looked at Dale's back and smiled helplessly. There was no way. If someone didn't like him, he couldn't force him. With Mobuka holding his arm, Kinzu entered directly into the banquet hall. At this time, there were already many people chatting in the banquet hall. Seeing Kinzu come in, many people nodded at him and smiled kindly. Kinzu also smiled and nodded to everyone. If he met someone he had talked to, he would stop and chat about the past. Anyway, he was already used to this kind of polite way. After the greetings, Kinzu took 2 glasses of red wine from the waiter, and took Mobuka to a secluded corner and sat down. Not long after they sat down, they saw Douglas walked in from the side door, came to the high platform in front of the banquet hall, and began to speak a welcome speech. Kinzu listened for a while. It was all cliches, which was really boring, so he raised his glass and clinked it with Mobuka, and began to taste the red wine in the glass. He didn't like to drink red wine before, because he couldn't afford good red wine in China, so he felt that it was just so-so. Since coming to the United States and drinking the original wine, he has also begun to like this kind of wine with a strong fruity aroma. Unlike the spiciness of white wine, wine has a special fruity aroma and a slightly astringent taste, but it is easy to drink. Moreover, for someone like him who drinks a pound of liquor, wine is more often drunk as a beverage. Just as Kinzu was sighing at the good quality of the wine in his hand, Douglas' voice came from the side. "Clean, why are you here? Aren't you going to dance?" Douglas nodded and greeted Mobuka next to him. Kinzu only then realized that Douglas had finished his speech at some point and came to Kinzu with a female companion. "Ha, no, I haven't learned this." Kinzu raised his glass and clinked it with him lightly, smiling. "Ha, then you really should learn it. How can you come to the United States without dancing ballroom dance?" Taking a sip of the brandy in the glass, Douglas smiled and teased Kinzu. He paused and looked at the lively dance floor in the center of the hall. "Continue. Let's go down and dance for a while, let your female companion teach you." Kinzu was helpless, looking at the back of Douglas who had left, and turned his head to look at Mobuka. This girl should be able to dance, right? Mobuka did not disappoint Kinzu's expectations and nodded gently. She learned a little bit when she was in school. Well, just a little bit. Bringing Mobuka to the dance floor, the person next to him took the initiative to give up a position, and Kinzu smiled and thanked him. Then he imitated others, gently took Mobuka's slender waist, and began to sway left and right according to the method she taught. However, watching others swaying was fine. When it was his own turn, he felt that his body was very uncoordinated, especially after the strengthened physique. He had not yet completely mastered it. So, after shaking a few times, Kinzu felt that there was something under his feet. With a slight exclamation, Mobuka quickly held Kinzu's shoulders to prevent herself from falling. Kinzu quickly took his feet away and quickly supported Mobuka. Seeing her painful face, he was a little at a loss. He said in a low voice with an embarrassed face, "Mobuka, are you okay? I really didn't mean it." Damn, this time I was so embarrassed, but fortunately it was in a corner and no one saw it. It's okay. It's okay. But, Clean, you're really strong. After a while, Mobeka, who felt a little better, looked at Kinzu, who was embarrassed next to him, and said in a low voice. Hearing that she was okay, Kinzu was relieved and touched his nose with his hand awkwardly. Did he mean that because of the sudden increase in physical fitness, he has not yet mastered the strength of his body? Well, let's not learn it, right? Kinzu asked weakly. He was really afraid that he would give her a blow later, and then he would be too embarrassed to see anyone. After gritting his teeth and thinking for a while, Mobeka nodded, so let's not learn it. Although she was not very competent as a female companion, it was really painful to be stepped on. Just as Kinzu was about to take Mobeka to his seat, a pleasant female voice came from the side. Hi, are you Clean? Kinzu turned his head somewhat inexplicably, looking at the beautiful woman in front of him who looked very familiar, wearing a black tight-fitting off-shoulder dress, with long brown hair over her shoulders, and a pair of dark green eyes. He said uncertainly, Bella Swan. The visitor was obviously a little surprised, and smiled and said, I didn't expect Mr. Keen to have watched Twilight. Let me introduce myself, I am Kristen Stewart. As she said, Kristen stretched out her tender little hands to Kinzu. Kinzu quickly stretched out his hand and shook hands with this sudden Twilight girl. He really felt like he had met his idol now. He has seen all the Twilight movies. He has a good impression of Isabella Swan, the heroine with a distinctive personality. Thanks to Shiaxi Banksy and 12,138, buy you book. Several big rewards and support. Thank you for the recommendation votes of the book friends. Thank you. Second update today. Chapter 155 Christine Bella Swan. Oh, no, it's Miss Christine. I'm really glad to meet you. Can you sign an autograph for me? Kinzu was a little speechless when he saw Mobeka, who was like a fanatical fan. Although he liked her very much, it wasn't that exaggerated, right? Didn't he feel his feet hurt? Ha, hello, I'm glad to meet you too. Christine had a charming smile on her face, which made Kinzu's heart beat faster. However, why did Kinzu feel that there was something wrong with the way she looked at Mobeka? After watching Christine sign an autograph for Mobeka, she smiled and greeted him, Miss Christine, nice to meet you. I'm Kinzu, and this is my female companion, Mobeka. Hello, Mr. Clean, I'm glad to meet you too. I heard Mr. Dub praise you highly, saying that you are the youngest billionaire. Christine smiled and complimented, but her eyes looked at Mobeka from time to time, as if she was more concerned about the situation of this fan. Kinzu felt a little ashamed when he saw this, as if he didn't care about Mobeka as much as this new acquaintance. So he apologized. Sorry, my female companion is not feeling well, let's talk next time. Before Christine could speak, Mobeka spoke first. Clean, I'm fine, you see, I can walk by myself. As he said that, he broke free from the support and ran to Christine's side, and began to ask questions. Kinzu covered his face a little. This little idiot, has he never seen a star before? However, seeing the two women chatting so enthusiastically, Kinzu had no choice but to find a place with the two women and sit down to continue chatting. Through the chat, Kinzu learned that the Hollywood star that Douglas said he would introduce to him was the Twilight girl, Christine. Kinzu's first thought was that if he had known, he would not have brought Mobeka here. What a good opportunity. However, this thought only existed for a moment. Looking at Mobeka's pretty little face, Kinzu felt that his own Mobeka was better. Celebrities seemed too far away. While several people were chatting heatedly, Douglas walked to the center of the stage, turned off the music, picked up the microphone and tapped it gently. After everyone's attention was focused, he spoke. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the maiden voyage of the Star of the Sea cruise ship. We will reach the high seas in an hour. The time that everyone is most looking forward to is coming. In addition, there are many restaurants on the Star of the Sea, including the Pacific Moon Restaurant, Santa Fe Restaurant, Surf Restaurant, Vivada Restaurant, Sabatonisa Restaurant, Sterling Steakhouse, etc. They are not open today officially, and all consumption is free. Also not open today are the Helmsman Bar, the Singer Bar, the Stern Bar, the Churchill Bar, the Chrysos Pool, and 2 thermal spas, the Neptune Pool, and 2 thermal spas, the Terrace Pool, and the Oasis Thermal Spa. In short, I hope everyone will have fun and enjoy themselves on the Star of the Sea today. Thank you all. After speaking, Douglas walked off the stage amid warm applause. Kinzu was shocked when he heard this. There were at least 100 or 200 people here today. How come all the expenses were waived? Christine, who was standing next to him, looked at Kinzu's surprised expression and explained with a smile, "Clean, you don't really think that the Douglas family would do a business at a loss, do you? This little money can be earned back in one night at their casino. The casino is not free." Kinzu suddenly realized that he didn't seem to have heard that the casino was free, but did the casino make so much money? This question was destined to be answered by no one, because there was no need to ask it at all, otherwise why would Douglas get such a gambling boat? "Sister Christine, let's go for a spa." After the excitement, Mobica, who felt a little uncomfortable, looked at Christine with some expectation and asked. Now she seemed like a child, asking for an adult's opinion. "Okay, let's go now." Christine's eyes flashed with excitement, and she agreed with a smile. "Clean, are you going?" At this time, Mobica remembered that Kinzu was still around, and she stuck out her tongue a little embarrassedly. "I won't go." "Go find Dale and ask her to go with you." Kinzu looked at this girl who was going to be a crazy fan, and thought it would be better to let Dale come to accompany her, so that she wouldn't be sold out in the end. Although he didn't think Christine would do such a thing. But looking at the eyes of this Twilight girl, Kinzu always felt that something was wrong, but he couldn't tell. Since Kinzu had no objection, Mobica directly pulled Christine and walked outside. Watching the two graceful figures slowly disappear from his sight, Kinzu was relieved. He felt a little uncomfortable being with the beautiful stars, and he didn't know why, but he always got nervous involuntarily. He took out his mobile phone and called Dale. After telling her the matter, Kinzu got up and prepared to go to the boat. There were not many people in the banquet hall at this time. Most of them went to play what they wanted to play. Today was basically a carnival night. How could they not have fun? After leaving the banquet hall, Kinzu slowly strolled around the ship. It's true that the interior space of this ship is really large. After walking for a long time, Kinzu didn't walk from the banquet hall to the deck. Along the way, various small shops were open for business. Various delicious fruit snacks were piled up at the door, and they were all available for free. Kinzu couldn't help but want to try them, so when he passed a stall full of freshly baked snacks, he took a plate and put a few pieces in his hand, eating while walking. As soon as the snacks entered his mouth, Kinzu couldn't help but give a thumbs up to the baker here. They were crispy and tasted particularly fragrant. After walking for a long time, Kinzu was a little tired. Holding the snack plate, he found a bar nearby and sat down. There were not too many people in the bar. After all, there were so many fun things waiting for them on the ship. Those who like to drink are relatively few. Even if there are some who like to drink, they have to see if their female companions are willing. Kinzu called the waiter over, ordered a cocktail, and casually took out a $10 tip from his wallet and handed it to the waiter. Even in the United States, you have to tip everywhere. Sometimes you go to a restaurant for a meal, the meal is not much, but the tip is not small. Although the consumption on the ship is free, but people have served you, you still have to tip. Today is the third update, and it is also to make up for the update from the day before yesterday. A new week has begun. Please recommend and reward support. Thank you everyone. Chapter 156. Gambling Hall. Kinzu quietly sat there for more than half an hour, sipping the cocktail in the glass, listening to the soft music in the bar, and watching the hot blonde performing in the bar. It was not until 11 o'clock in the evening that Kinzu was a little sleepy, and then the broadcast on the ship that they had arrived at the high seas sounded. Finally arrived, go and see it and go back to sleep. After drinking the last bit of wine in the glass in one gulp, Kinzu muttered, got up and walked out of the bar. Looking at the crowd outside that suddenly became bustling, he sighed a little. Gambling is indeed the most attractive. He took out his mobile phone and called Mobica, but no one answered after waiting for a long time. This girl, what is she doing? Kinzu had no choice but to call Dale again. Fortunately, the phone only rang once and was connected. Dale, where's Mobica? Why didn't you answer the phone? The casino has already started. Ask her if she wants to go and have a look. Dale on the other end of the phone looked at the time and the closed door of the single room. She was also a little surprised. Half an hour had passed, why hadn't they finished yet? So she said to the phone, Boss, Mobica and Miss Christine are still doing the spa in there. Maybe they didn't hear the phone ringing. I'll go and have a look. After hanging up the phone, Kinzu was a little bored, so he walked slowly and came to the deck. There were not many people on the deck at this time, well, to be precise, there were not many men. Those who were still on the deck were those who had no interest in gambling. At a glance, all the beautiful women in evening dresses were there. Kinzu suddenly felt that it was a wrong choice to come to the deck now. However, since he was already here, he didn't plan to go back. So he found a secluded corner and sat down. The cruise ship had slowed down at this time. Feeling the cool sea breeze at night, Kinzu's heart, which had just been a little heated, slowly calmed down. At this time, the gold in his hand began to vibrate. It was Dale's. Kinzu picked it up. Boss, Mobika and Miss Christine are ready. They said they want to go and have a look. Hearing that Mobika wanted to go to the casino, Kinzu said, well, then you guys come over. I'm on the deck now. Let's go together. After hanging up the phone, Kinzu waited on the deck for less than 5 minutes, and saw 3 graceful figures appear on the deck. Here. Seeing that Mobika was still looking around for him, Kinzu hurriedly called out and walked out of the corner. Clean, why are you here? Let's go. Take us to the casino. We haven't been there before. When Mobika saw Kinzu, she rushed over and took his arm, her little face flushed with excitement. He looked at the girl a little strangely. Why is she so enthusiastic now? But he didn't think much about it. He turned his head and looked at Christine with a calm and peaceful smile and said, Miss Christine, we are going to the casino. Do you want to go with us? She nodded indifferently. Anyway, she had nothing to do today and came out to relax, so she said, okay, let's go together. To be honest, I have never been to such a place. Since the opinions were unified, Kinzu led the 3 women to the casino on the top floor. They didn't take the elevator. The 4 of them went up to the top floor smoothly along the escalator next to the deck. However, the place they came up was the outdoor swimming pool area, and they still needed to walk a few steps inside. The entire top floor, except for the outdoor swimming pool, is the territory of the casino. You can imagine how big this casino is. Soon, several people came to the entrance of the casino. After verifying their identities, the doorman politely said, Mr. Clean, Mr. Dub has instructed that if you come, he will prepare $100,000 in chips for you for free. You can play as you like. If you're in, it's all yours. Kinzu was stunned. There was such a good thing, but he still waved his hand and refused. Forget about the free money. Go and exchange it for $100,000. As he said that, he took out a checkbook from his pocket, wrote a few times on it, tore it off and handed it to the doorman. The doorman was a little embarrassed. It was rare for the big boss to ask him to do something, and it was such a simple task of delivering money. Could it be so useless? Are there really people in this world who don't want money? Seeing the doorman was a little overwhelmed, Kinzu smiled and said, it's okay, go and change the chips, I'll talk to Doug later. The doorman nodded helplessly and said, okay, sir, please wait a moment, I'll go and change it for you. Turning his head to look at Christine who was smiling at him, Kinzu smiled and shrugged, saying, don't look at me. I don't know why Doug is so nice to me. Christine smiled and nodded to show her understanding, but deep in her heart she was deeply complaining, do you think I will believe it? Before Kinzu thought about it, the doorman came over with a blonde, blue-eyed, hot bunny girl, carrying a tray. He introduced to Kinzu. Mr. Clean, a total of $100,000 in chips have been exchanged for you. There are 90 red chips, each representing $1,000, and 100 blue chips, each representing $100. There are a total of 190 chips here, please count. Nodding, thanking the doorman, took out a blue chip and threw it directly to him. Then he took a few women and followed the charming bunny girl in front of him to the casino. The casino was naturally decorated extremely luxuriously. The light from the tall dome was always so soft, and the thick carpet was always so quiet when stepped on. Whether it was beautiful women gambling with you, or drinks and food, the casino had everything. No matter whether your wallet was big or small, the casino always gave you the feeling of entering the palace and becoming an emperor. Of course, when most people walked out of the casino, they suddenly realized that their wallets had shrunk a lot. It's funny to say that the casino seems to have everything, but the only thing you can't see is the sun and the clock. Without these two things, people forget the time. In addition, as long as you were at the gambling table, the drinks are free, and people often think of leaving only when they lose everything. So if you want to have some fun, the casino is really a good place to go. If you really want to win money, it's probably a waste of time. Looking at the densely packed gambling tools and the bustling crowds in the casino, Kinzu, a little otaku who stays at home all year round, feels like he has no idea where to start. He turned his head and looked at the 3 girls behind him. Except for Dale who was better, Mobeka and the famous Twilight girl Christine all looked confused. Obviously, they didn't know what to do next. Thanks to Fengxiai and Concert Boy for the rewards. Thank you for your encouragement and support. Liu is very grateful. As the first book of a newcomer, there are indeed many problems. Liu has been working hard to learn and correct them. Thank you book friends for your continued support. By the way, I would like to recommend a friend's book Treasure Kingdom. Like Liu, he is also a newcomer. We are all constantly learning and working hard. Chapter 157 Winning and Losing. Since he had no idea where to start, Qinzu was going to take them around the casino first. At least he would take a look at the situation first. Winning or not is another matter. He couldn't come out to play and make a fool of himself. The bunny girl who was carrying the tray next to him realized that they seemed to be novices, so she took the initiative to introduce them. Mr. Clean, we have 2 casinos here. You are now in the roulette area, which mainly includes roulette, slot machines, and Wheel of Fortune. As she spoke, the blonde bunny girl gestured to several gambling tables surrounded by people. Qinzu followed her gaze and saw that several large gambling tables were crowded with people. Behind the gambling tables, a beautiful dealer was operating the gambling tools calmly. At this time, whether it was the blonde whites, the dark-skinned blacks with white teeth, or the yellow-skinned black-eyed Chinese, all of them were staring at the roulette wheel with red faces, and their expressions seemed extremely excited. Although they were not short of money. After all, those who could get on the ship today were either rich or noble. Hundreds of millions of dollars were just a drizzle for them. What they enjoyed was the process of gambling. As the bunny girl walked slowly, after passing many crowded gambling tables, they finally came to a relatively quiet place. Mr. Clean, this is another gambling hall. The main gambling here is classic blackjack, poker, baccarat, etc. Following the introduction of the bunny girl, Qinzu also saw many gambling tables. Although there were fewer people around, the atmosphere seemed very tense. What are you going to play? Qinzu asked with a smile, turning his head to look at the 3 women who were curiously looking around. Shaking his head blankly, Mobica looked at Christine with an inquiring look. I don't care. I just came to see it. You guys can have fun. Christine looked around and felt a little bored. It seemed a little different from what she imagined. Although she has never been a good girl, this is her first time to come to a casino. This is also the reason why Douglas said that she is difficult to invite. If it was an ordinary social gathering, how could she refuse Doug's invitation? Then let's play a roulette. I don't know much about other things. Let's try our luck. Since they didn't care, Qinzu made his own decision. Anyway, he came here today to support Douglas. He was really not interested in gambling. Okay, let's go. Mobica nodded indifferently, indicating that he agreed with Qinzu's opinion, and then took Christine's little hand and walked in the direction they came from. Qinzu was a little dumbfounded. This script was wrong. When did their relationship become so good? And Christine is too approachable, isn't she? Not only does she not have the arrogance of an ordinary star, but now she is like a big sister next door. As the saying goes, there must be something wrong when things are out of the ordinary. But Qinzu thought about it for a long time and couldn't figure out what the problem was. If it was a man, he could still say that he was attracted to Mobica, but as a woman, there was no such suspicion. Am I really overthinking it? Qinzu scratched his head. Could it be that Christine was usually so approachable, and he was overthinking it? But, he could clearly feel that she was obviously alienated when facing him. Clean, what are you doing? Come here. Mobica shouted at Qinzu, who was standing there stupidly from a distance. Oh. I'm coming. Qinzu agreed and stopped thinking about these messy things. There must be a way out when the car reaches the mountain. Who cares? Buy it and leave it, buy it and leave it. Come on. 1, 2, 3, open. From a distance, Qinzu heard a familiar sound of dice hitting the dice cup from a gambling table next to him, accompanied by the rhythmic counting sound of the dealer. 2, 5, 6, 13, big. Suddenly, there were sighs and cheers from the lucky ones. Oh, today is really weird, 10 big bets in a row. Yeah, this is the 10th one. The next one must be small. Come on, I'll buy 10,000 small ones. As he said that, a fat white old man pushed a pile of red chips directly to the area on the gambling table that represented small. Qinzu looked at the bunny girl beside him curiously. You have dice here. How do you play? Mr. Clean, yes, we have almost all the famous gambling methods in the world. The rules are all in accordance with unified standards. As he said that, the bunny girl took Kinzu to the gambling table where the dice were played. "Hey, let's go over there and try our luck." A black uncle took one look at the newcomer Kinzu, then he got up and left with his two friends. Looking at the empty seats, Kinzu gestured to Mobuka, and the few of them sat down around the gambling table. After sitting down, Kinzu subconsciously looked up at the dealer opposite him. After all, from now on, they were enemies. Across the gambling table was a young Asian girl, but it was unknown which country she was from. At this moment, she was bending over to pick up the scattered chips on the table. She was wearing a low-cut dealer uniform, which was tightly stretched by her plump breasts, and looked full of temptation. After collecting the chips on the gambling table, the beautiful dealer put the dice cup back and pressed the switch of the electric dice cup again. After a burst of crackling sounds, the young beautiful dealer deliberately glanced at Kinzu and the others who had just sat down, and said in a delicate voice, "Come on, buy it and leave it." With a burst of noisy noises, the gambling table was piled with a pair of red and blue chips. Kinzu roughly estimated that there were probably hundreds of thousands of dollars. Looking at Mobuka, who was eager to try, Kinzu smiled and said, "If you want to bet, just bet." "Why are you looking at me?" Mobuka no longer hesitated and took the chips from Kinzu, and bet $5,000 on the big one. After betting, Mobuka glanced at Kinzu, and then stuck out his tongue embarrassedly. Kinzu took a look and was a little unsure, so he bet $10,000 on the small one. Looking at Kinzu in surprise, the beautiful dealer shouted loudly, "Buy and leave, 1, 2, 3. Open." Kinzu was the first to look at the open dice cup. 2, 2, 1. 5 small. "Wow, I won already." Mobuka, this girl, completely forgot that she had already lost, and looked at Kinzu excitedly and shouted, "But you lost." Kinzu subconsciously reminded her, "Oh, that's right, I lost. But we still won even if we lost 5,000 and won 10,000. Thanks to Hongchun and Logic's issue for their support." At the same time, I would like to mention the book friend in the book review section who didn't say anything and just posted a rubbish comment. Didn't your parents teach you how to respect the fruits of other people's labor? I know I don't write well, but I stayed up all night and typed it out word by word. If you are not satisfied, you can mention it, or you can choose not to read it. Doesn't it make you look particularly well educated if you just curse people without saying anything? Chapter 158 Leopard. When the beautiful dealer put the dice cup away, Mobuka stopped betting and turned to look at Kinzu. "Clean, how do you bet this time?" Looking at Mobuka's big blue eyes, staring at him without blinking, Kinzu touched his nose and said, "Let's bet on the small one." "Don't we bet on the points?" Mobuka looked at the odds of betting on the points and was a little jealous. "Ha, it's good enough to guess the big or small." Kinzu shook his head and laughed. He didn't expect this girl to be so bold. "Okay, then, I'll bet on the small one." Mobuka sighed in disappointment and agreed helplessly. As she said that, she pushed all the money she had just won and the capital, a total of $15,000. "Buy it and leave it, open." As she said that, the beautiful dealer pressed the button, and the dice inside immediately made a crackling sound. After the dice stopped rolling, the beautiful dealer looked at Kinzu and counted, 1, 2, 3, 6 small. "Wow, we won again, Clean, you're awesome." Mobuka cheered excitedly, hugged Kinzu's head, and took the initiative to give him a kiss. This made Kinzu blush. When had the little otaku ever experienced such a scene of showing affection in public? Christine, who was standing aside, looked at the blushing Kinzu in surprise. "Aren't these young rich men all playboys? How could they blush?" I don't know if Kinzu was lucky today, or if the beautiful dealer deliberately let him go. The next 5 or 6 times were small. Mobuka also bet on small at Kinzu's signal. Moreover, this girl always bets the capital and the money she won. Clean, shall we continue to bet? Looking at the colorful chips piled up in front of him, there were millions of dollars. Mobuka came back to his senses, swallowed his saliva, and asked with some stammering. The gamblers also looked at Kinzu eagerly. Just now, they watched Kinzu in all the time and followed Kinzu to place bets. Kinzu didn't expect that his luck today was so amazing. He wanted to play casually, but he didn't expect to win so much. However, he came to support Douglas today, so he couldn't win so much back. Wouldn't this ruin his place? Looking at the beautiful croupier with an unnatural look on the opposite side and the gamblers who looked at him eagerly, Kinzu smiled and said, "Bet, why not?" As he said that, he didn't care about the beautiful croupier on the opposite side whose face turned pale because of Kinzu's words, and pushed all the millions of dollars of chips in front of him into a red area on the gambling table. The whole gambling table was suddenly silent. Then it exploded with a hum sound. Is he crazy? Or has he become stupid because of winning so much money? A black youth sneered with some disdain. He just kept losing because he disdained to follow Kinzu's betting. Oh my God, this young man is too dark-hearted, isn't he? A middle-aged white man shook his head, sighed, and helplessly bet on the big. Alas, what a waste, more than 1 million is just wasted. It would be great if you gave it to me. This was the voice of a middle-aged woman with some jealousy and pity. Ha ha, the yellow people are all local tyrants, they don't care about this little money, don't you think so? A white youth dressed in hip-hop said with a face full of sarcasm, and at the same time continued to push the chips to the small. Yes, they are all local tyrants, we can't compare. His companion looked at Kinzu with envy, his eyes wandering around Mobica and Christine from time to time, all kinds of envy and jealousy. Clean, are you crazy? That's impossible. Before Mobica spoke, Christine frowned and couldn't help but interjected. It's okay, just betting for fun, winning or losing doesn't matter. Kinzu glanced at the beautiful dealer opposite him who was obviously relieved. He turned his head and smiled at Christine beside him. But you were clearly giving them money. You should know that the probability of that kind of dice appearing is no more than 1 in 10,000. Christine's brows frowned even more tightly. She didn't understand Kinzu's intentions. In her opinion, Kinzu was simply too confident. He actually bet so much money on a position that would never win. Yes, Clean, how could you do that? I won it with great difficulty. Mobica was also a little confused beside him. That was millions of dollars. Although she didn't feel anything when she was excited just now. But now that she has sobered up, looking at the pile of colorful chips representing US dollars that Kinzu bet on, her heart ached, and she wanted to pounce on Kinzu and bite him twice. Looking at the two women beside him helplessly, and the Americans so ignorant of the ways of the world. Kinzu had no choice but to whisper, I know all this, I did it on purpose, I'll explain it to you when we get back. They looked at Kinzu suspiciously, on purpose. A big question mark popped up in the heads of the two girls, and at the same time, a sentence emerged in their hearts. Rich man, not short of money. Ignoring the whispers between Kinzu and the others, the beautiful dealer, whose face returned to normal, looked at Kinzu with some contempt. In her opinion, this was also a person who was overwhelmed by victory. Such a high odds, how could it be so easy to win? Seeing that everyone had placed their bets, she shouted loudly, buy and leave, open. As she said that, the beautiful dealer pressed the button. When the dice in the dice cup stopped turning, she lowered her head to look inside and prepared to report the number. It didn't matter that she looked at it, the beautiful dealer felt a buzzing sound in her head, as if something exploded in her mind. Her mind was blank, and she lost the ability to think. The surroundings seemed to be frozen again, and became very quiet. Water? God, this can't be true. My money. A black youth broke the quiet atmosphere, shouting in disbelief, oh my God, am I seeing right? 3 6s. This is a leopard. The middle-aged white man was almost choking, his heart was bleeding, why didn't he follow just now? OMG, that oriental guy seemed to have bet more than 1 million just now. What are the odds? The white hip-hop boy looked at Kinzu with jealousy and envy, and his expression made him want to go up and take a bite of him. Ha ha ha, I won, thank God, thank you, young man. An Asian middle-aged man was ecstatic, just now he was the only one who made up his mind and followed with 10,000 US dollars. Thanks to Fengxi, Xiaoyo, and Renti Meishu for their rewards and support, especially to the great god Meishu for his support for newcomers. CS Kushanda Western Novela on Canal Distinta a Mundo Fanfic Novelas, Significat lo Descarga and y Subir and Sinisfuetzos Invitamos Cordialmente Visitar Nuestro Canal. Mundo Fanfic Novelas all encontras la versión original de esta historia y podrás explorar muchas otras novelas de diversos narradores. Te esperamos para sumergirte en un mundo de novelas incredibles. Chapter 159. 20 million US dollars. The gamblers around were in an uproar, talking about it. Some were distressed about the money they lost, some remembered Kinzu's bet just now. Others were grateful for Kinzu's bet. Kinzu and the three women were stunned at what was happening in front of them. Kinzu swallowed hard and murmured, damn, is this okay? Mobica turned her head and stared at Kinzu with stars in her eyes. She was so excited that she said incoherently, "Clean, did you know that the leopard will be open this time? Oh my god, how much money is that? Let me calculate it first." Kinzu was a little worried when he saw the excited look. Christine on the side also looked at Kinzu with a strange look in her eyes. How did this man do it? At this time, the beautiful dealer on the opposite side finally came back to her senses from her confusion. Looking at the chaotic scene, she quickly stepped on the emergency button at her feet. After a while, a middle-aged white man in a well-dressed suit hurried over with two men who looked like his subordinates. "Rita, what's going on?" The middle-aged white man looked at the somewhat chaotic scene and asked the beautiful croupier in front of him. After the beautiful croupier named Rita reported the incident to him in a low voice, the middle-aged white man also took a breath of cold air. He glared at Rita fiercely and quickly reported the matter. He lost 20 to 30 million US dollars in this round, and he had no hope for his future. After reporting the matter, he quickly asked Rita to pay the chips of others first, so that the gambling table could operate normally. He walked towards Kinzu according to Rita's instructions. When he approached, the middle-aged white man was also stunned, and called out in surprise, "Mr. Clean." Kinzu looked at the middle-aged white man in front of him who looked familiar, as if he was a confidant of Douglas. Hearing him calling him, he smiled awkwardly and said, "It's you." After saying that, he couldn't say anything. What do you want him to say? Is it that he is lucky, or that the casino is unlucky? After a brief surprise, the middle-aged white man was the first to react, and he showed a smile that was uglier than crying, and said with a dry throat, "Clean, Mr. Clean, let's go to the VIP room." Shrugging helplessly, Kinzu and the three women followed the middle-aged white man and walked towards the VIP room. As for the chips on the gambling table, he didn't pay any attention to them. When Kinzu arrived at the VIP room, Douglas, who was waiting inside, was a little confused. "Clean, why are you here?" After asking, he looked at the confidant next to him. He thought Kinzu had something to do with him. Before Kinzu could speak, the confidant took 2 steps forward, leaned over to Douglas' ear, and whispered the story. The more Douglas listened, the more wonderful the expression on his face became. After the confidant repeated the story, Douglas looked at Kinzu in disbelief. "Clean, you still know how to gamble? And your skills are so high." "No, I really don't know how to gamble. I haven't played it a few times in total. I've really been very lucky recently." Kinzu spread his hands and said helplessly. Douglas's mouth twitched, and a classic Chinese curse almost came out of his mouth. "You call this good luck? From $5,000 to more than 1 million, and then more than 1 million bet on the leopard? Damn, that's 24 times the odds. This is more than 20 million, nearly 30 million US dollars. Rubbing his head in frustration, Douglas took out his checkbook and prepared to write a check to Kinzu. Although more than 20 million US dollars seemed a lot, it was still a drop in the bucket for him. No, Doug, I won't take this money. I'm really just too lucky today. How could I come to ruin your casino on the first day of its opening?" Looking at Douglas's actions, Kinzu quickly waved his hand and refused. He was wrong today. They kindly invite you to come and play. Not only are they very nice and enthusiastic, but they also provide food, accommodation, and girls. This makes Kinzu really embarrassed to ask for the money. Besides, Douglas gives him a very good impression. Not only is he warm and generous, but Kinzu does not feel the arrogance of a rich man in him at all. Mobica and Christine, who were sitting on the side, looked at Kinzu in surprise. "Is this guy crazy? That's more than 20 million US dollars, not 220 million. Just so no, and you don't want it." Douglas also looked at Kinzu with some surprise. He didn't expect Kinzu to refuse the money. Just now, he had already classified Kinzu as someone who should not be deeply befriended. Now it seems that he really misunderstood him. Although more than 20 million US dollars is nothing, he still has a lot of opinions about Kinzu's behavior of ruining the place. "How can this be? This is what you won, and it's what you deserve." Shaking his head, Douglas refused. "I won't take this money. If you really regard me as a friend, don't give me this money, otherwise we won't even be friends anymore," Kinzu said firmly. After looking at Kinzu for a long time, Douglas put down the checkbook in his hand, shook his head and smiled bitterly. "It's hard for me to do this. If it gets out that my casino doesn't pay out when it wins, then I don't need to open this casino anymore." Kinzu also laughed twice and said, "How could that be? There are only a few people in the room. I can just tell the outside world that you paid out." Then he looked at Mobica and Dale beside him. The two girls nodded obediently, indicating that they knew nothing. Seeing the two girls nod, Kinzu turned his head and looked at Christine, who looked a little dazed. "Don't worry, I don't know anything." Mobuka, who came back from her trance, looked at Kinzu's deep eyes staring at her and almost lost herself in them again. "Okay, I owe you a favor this time." Since Kinzu insisted on not taking it, Douglas didn't force it. To be honest, he didn't want to suffer a loss on the first day of opening. After they finished their work and walked out of the VIP room, Mobuka couldn't help it anymore. She grabbed Kinzu and said anxiously, "Clean, do you know what you were doing? That's more than $20 million US. Looking at Mobuka's anxious and concerned expression, Kinzu couldn't help but kiss her face lightly, and then explained the reason to her. Finally, looking at his confused expression, he said, "Do you know Douglas's identity? A favor from him is much more valuable than $20 million US. Shaking her head blankly, Mobuka, who had never been in contact with the upper class, really didn't know who Douglas was. The second update today, please recommend Chapter 160 and Christine, who was standing by, understood Kinzu's intentions. She whispered to Mobuka about Douglas's identity, and Mobuka finally understood. Alas, it's a pity to lose so much money. We worked so hard to win it back. Although she knew the whole story, Mobuka still couldn't forget the more than $20 million US. Kinzu looked at this money grubber in silence. You worked so hard, but I didn't see you working so hard. He raised his hand to check the time. It was already 12 o'clock in the evening, so he said, "It's not too early. Let's go back and rest early." As he said that, Kinzu glanced at Christine. The meaning was very clear. "Sister, we have to rest, and you should go back too." This time, Christine was more tactful. After checking the time, she was ready to leave. However, Mobuka spoke first. "Clean, let's take Sister Christine back on the way. She's a girl, don't let her run into bad guys." Although Kinzu knew that Mobuka's worry was completely unnecessary, since she had already spoken and it was not a big deal, he simply nodded and agreed. So the few of them continued to walk together. Christine led Mobuka in front, Kinzu walked slowly in the middle, and Dale was responsible for the rear. However, as they walked, Kinzu found that the route was becoming more and more familiar. When the elevator reached the 5th floor and walked to the side of his room, Christine took out a room card from her bag and said as she opened the door, "Clean, I'm here. Thank you for your company today. I'm really happy. You should also go to bed early." Kinzu did not say anything, but slowly came to a door next to her, and took out the room card under her stunned gaze. Ding! With a crisp sound, the door opened. Looking at Christine, who was a little dumbfounded beside him, Kinzu shrugged and said, "Good night, we're home too." Kinzu did not expect that the room Doug arranged for them would be so close. It seems that what he said at the beginning about preparing a female companion for himself was true. Back in the room, Kinzu looked at Mobuka, who was lying on the bed a little tired, and said, "Do you want to take a shower first?" Nodding, Mobuka forced herself to sit up, stood up and walked towards the bathroom. "Dale, I'm sorry to ask you to sleep in the second bedroom today." Kinzu looked at Dale beside him apologetically. "I'm fine, if you're fine, I'll go to bed first." Dale shrugged indifferently. After Dale went back, Kinzu grinned, quickly stripped off his clothes, and rushed to the bathroom with a lewd smile. When he came to the door, Kinzu grasped the handle and twisted it gently. The door opened a crack silently. "Ah, how did you get in?" Mobuka, who was taking a shower, exclaimed. She was so scared by the sudden appearance of Kinzu that she almost shouted for help. "Hey, aren't I here to rub your back?" "No, I don't." Before she could finish her words, Mobuka's small and delicate red lips were blocked by Kinzu's big mouth. At the same time, Kinzu's hands began to become dishonest, wandering around Mobuka's body, slowly making her breathing rapid. After a long time, Kinzu carried the limp Mobuka back to the big bed, looking at her face full of satisfaction, feeling extremely proud. He had tormented Mobuka 3 times in the bathroom just now. If she hadn't begged for mercy in the end, this matter would not be over. The next morning, Kinzu woke up early. Looking at Mobuka sleeping peacefully in his arms, he suddenly had the urge to stay with her for the rest of his life. "Good morning, Teen." Under Kinzu's gaze, Mobuka slowly opened her sleepy eyes and smiled sweetly at him. "Good morning, baby." As he said that, Kinzu leaned over Mobuka's forehead and gently left a kiss mark. When Kinzu got up, he found that the cruise ship had returned to the dock without knowing when. It was now parked on the dock, attracting the envious eyes of passers-by. Accompanying Mobecca and Dale, they went to the cafeteria on the third floor of the cruise ship. Looking at the sumptuous breakfast, Kinzu felt his stomach began to protest. "Hi, Sister Christine, good morning." Mobecca was surprised to find that her idol Christine was also waiting in the cafeteria at this time. She greeted them happily. "Good morning, Mobecca, why are you here so early too?" Christine put down the knife and fork in her hand, and greeted several people with a smile. Christine was wearing a casual outfit today, a white t-shirt with a beige long skirt with tassels. She looked less stunning than the dress she wore yesterday, but had more youthful air like a girl next door. "We have something to do later, so we got up early. What about you? Why don't you sleep a little longer?" Kinzu looked at the people opposite him, greeted them one by one, and then asked casually. Christine was not alone today. Besides two burly women who were obviously bodyguards, there were also two young women who looked like assistants. "Well, I have an event in a while and we'll get off the boat soon. You guys eat slowly. We still have to go back to pack up, so we'll leave first. Come and play with me when you have time in the future." With that, Christine stood up, said hello to Kinzu and the others apologetically, left them her personal phone number, and then floated away. Although Mobecca was reluctant to see her idol leave, she also knew that he had work to do, so she didn't want to bother him. After breakfast, Kinzu found Douglas, who had just got up, said goodbye, and took the two girls off the boat. Looking at the behemoth docked at the pier, Kinzu became more looking forward to his own boat. Although ours is not as big as this one, it is still a boat after all. After driving his Knight the 15th out of the parking lot, Kinzu asked Dale to drive Mobecca back to his residence first. He had a lot of things to do today. When he came downstairs, Kinzu wanted to go up and say a few words to Onid, say goodbye or something. But he heard Mobecca say that Onid went to school early in the morning, so he could only sigh with regret. Sitting in the speeding Knight the 15th, Kinzu took out his mobile phone and called Albert. "Morning, Mr. Keen." Albert on the other end of the phone greeted Kinzu with a smile, and seemed to be in a very good mood. "Well, Albert, I want to know how my boat is now." Kinzu asked directly. "Mr. Keen, I was just about to call you. Your boat was assembled the day before yesterday and is being tested for performance. I asked them to test it this morning. If there is no problem, you can pick up the boat today." "Oh, that's great, then I will go directly to pick up the boat this afternoon." Kinzu seemed very happy to hear the news. The Americans are really efficient. After hanging up the phone, Kinzu asked Dale to drive back to the hotel. In the morning, apart from waiting for Zumengyu and the others to come, there was nothing else to do. Today's first update: thank you Fenxi for your reward support, and thank you all the book friends for your recommendation votes. Thank you. Chapter 161. Classmates arrive. Kinzu waited in the hotel until 10 a.m., and then asked Dale to drive him to Kennedy International Airport. After arriving at the airport, looking at the crowded airport parking lot, Dale turned the Knight the 15th around and planned to find a parking lot outside to park the Knight the 15th in the parking lot outside. Kinzu looked at the crowded crowd outside the airport and the full parking lot, and was a little surprised. "Why are there so many people today?" "Boss, today is October 1st, of course there are a lot of people," Dale replied while turning around. Patting his head, he forgot the time since he was not at work. Seeing Dale turning around to find a parking lot, Kinzu suddenly thought of something else and said, "Dale, drive directly to the airport." Looking back at Kinzu in surprise, Dale did not say anything, turned around and drove the Knight the 15th directly to the airport. After turning a few corners, Knight the 15th arrived at the entrance of the VIP channel. Just as the two white security guards were about to come up to stop them, they saw the front window slowly rolled down, and a black card made of titanium alloy was handed out from inside. The young white security guard was confused. What did this mean? Just as he was about to ask Kinzu and the others to leave, he was stopped by the slightly older white security guard next to him. The older white man was very humble at first, and greeted Dale, then took the card and whispered something into the intercom. Less than a minute later, after hearing the confirmation message from the intercom, the white security guard returned the Centurion black gold card to Dale with both hands with a respectful face, and quickly opened the door to let Kinzu and the others in. Kinzu took the card from Dale and whistled proudly. He didn't expect it to be so useful. He could even enjoy the treatment that he could only see on TV. When the tail lights of the Knight the 15th slowly disappeared in front of him, the young white security guard couldn't help but be curious and asked in confusion, "Uncle Brown, what are you doing?" Didn't the higher-ups tell us that except for certain people, no outsiders can use the special passage? Jerry, have you forgotten what the card represents? The white man Brown slowly returned to his post and asked seriously of the young white man who looked confused. Jerry scratched his blonde hair that hadn't been washed for a few days and said a little embarrassedly, "Hey, what's so special about this black card? I haven't seen it in the training manual." Brown looked at the young man in front of him helplessly, and said with some regret, You don't even know the most basic Centurion black gold card? Do you think it's so easy to find such an easy job now? Ah, that's the Centurion black gold card. So there must be a big shot on the bus? Jerry shouted excitedly. He turned a blind eye to Brown's reminder. Now he was sighing in his heart. It turned out that the Centurion black gold card was like that. Although this item was included in the training, he, who barely passed the training, didn't recognize it. Of course, do you think the black gold card is so easy to get? There was at least a billionaire in the car just now. And do you recognize that car? It's the Knight the 15th. A high-end armored off-road vehicle, bulletproof. Although Brown is just a small security guard, he is usually fanatically obsessed with cars and can still recognize the Knight the 15th. Smacking his lips, Jerry looked at the Knight the 15th going away and said enviously, "When can I have such a day?" Kinzu didn't know that the two security guards could still talk for so long after he left. He looked at the paper leaf on his wrist. The plane should be landing in more than 10 minutes. Sure enough, this flight was still on time. Less than 10 minutes later, a silver-white passenger plane, like a giant bird, swooped down from the clouds. It taxied on the runway for a while and slowly stopped on the runway. After waiting for a while, the cabin door opened and the passengers began to slowly get off the plane. "Hi, boss. Second brother. This way." Kinzu couldn't help but shouting as he saw a big man and a little fat man getting off the plane. Liang and Wanmin heard the familiar voices and looked back in confusion. They hadn't even left the airport yet, so how come they heard the third brother's voice? Kinzu was speechless as he saw the two of them looking around. "Can't you see me standing here like this?" He couldn't help but take a few steps forward and shout a few more times. After attracting the attention of some foreigners in the airport, they finally saw Kinzu in a black dress. Liang came up to Kinzu and gave him a bear hug. He patted Kinzu's back and said jokingly, "Damn, third brother, I didn't expect you to look like a decent person after dressing up. I almost didn't recognize you." Being patted by the burly northeastern man Liang, Kinzu felt his blood boiling. He gave a bitter smile and surrendered. "Okay, brother, you admit defeat. If you continue like this, someone will die." Well, I'm used to it." Liang let go of his hand awkwardly and laughed. He would never admit that he did it on purpose. Kinzu stared at this guy helplessly and comforted himself in his heart that he was a generous man and would not bother with him for the time being. He turned around and hugged his second brother Wanming and the fourth brother Li Kaiang, who followed him one by one, then smiled and said, "I have been looking forward to you for a long time, and finally you are here. Damn, if it weren't for the two guys, the eldest and the third, I would have come here to fight the local tyrants. I would feel guilty if I didn't kill such a rich local tyrant." The second brother Wanmin cursed and laughed and punched Kinzu. "Don't talk about us, you can't come by yourself. It's obvious that someone is reluctant to part with a little red flower in Jiangnan. It's worse than a beast. Third brother, you don't know that this guy was reluctant to leave when he came. He wanted to look back every 3 steps. The eldest brother Liang was the first to quit and started to expose his past. Hey, second brother, you, the prodigal son, have turned back. Tell me, which girl was harmed by you?" Kinzu became interested and asked quickly. "With Wanming's personality, would you be reluctant to part with a girl? Ahem, well, is it really okay for you to leave your sister-in-law aside like this? Big brother, why don't you introduce her quickly? And you, don't look at it, I mean you, fourth brother, why don't you introduce your wife?" Wanming's face turned red, and he coughed twice, not knowing what to say. At this time, he saw the large group behind him catching up, so he quickly changed the subject. Thanks to Z-Chen, Smoky Grey Underwear, Red Dust Walk, and several big names for their support. By the way, let me talk about the listing. At present, this book will not be listed this month. It should be free for a long time. I hope you will support it. Chapter 162. Reunion. Although Kinzu was very dissatisfied with Wanming's change of subject, it was this guy's fault for changing the subject. After he said that, Kinzu really couldn't continue to pester him. Helplessly glaring at the smug guy, Qinzu smiled and said to the eldest and fourth brother, "Second brother is right, your sister-in-law is here, why don't you introduce her to me?" The eldest brother Liang pulled over a long-legged beauty wearing a khaki thin windbreaker and short hair, and introduced her. "Come, let me introduce you, this is my eldest sister-in-law Lan, who is from the same county as me. She graduated from Jiangnan Normal University and now works in the same place as me." Lan took the initiative to extend her hand and shake hands with Qinzu, smiling and saying, "I have always heard Liang mention you, and today I finally see you in person." Extending his hand and shaking hands with this northeastern girl who was not much shorter than him, Qinzu smiled and said, "Sister-in-law, does the eldest brother always say something bad about me? Hey, third brother, am I such a person in your heart?" Before Lan could speak, Liang yelled at Qinzu with the wrong look on his face. "That's right." Qinzu, Wanming and Li Kaiang shouted in unison. After shouting, the three of them high-fived each other and laughed. After laughing, Qinzu looked at the petite girl wearing a black bat shirt and long hair next to the fourth brother Li Kaiang and asked, "Fourth brother, is this your sister-in-law?" Li Kaiang smiled and held the girl's hand, introducing her, "Well, third brother, this is Daizhu, who grew up with me." Qinzu just stretched out his hand to shake Daizhu's, and Wanming beside him screamed, "I say, fourth brother, you are not genuine, such a beautiful childhood sweetheart, I never heard you mention it when you were in school." Well, second brother, didn't we have a relationship at the time?" Li Kaiang was a little embarrassed. He always regarded Daizhu as his sister. Who knew that after returning home, the two elders would match them up and it would become like this now? "Hey, Qinzu, what are you guys doing? You're arm in arm in public, don't you know the impact?" Linzu looked at the people in front of her and teased with a smile on her face. Qinzu turned around when he heard the voice. Just when he was about to say something back, he saw the girl following behind that crowd, holding a delicate pink suitcase in her hand. Qinzu took a few quick steps and didn't have time to answer the monitor's teasing. He stared at the girl in front of him, who was wearing a white dress, with long black hair casually draped behind her head, and a delicate oval face with a smile on her face. He said softly, "Mengyo, you're here." Zhu Mengyo smiled and nodded, blinking her charming eyes gently. Looking at the handsome man in a suit in front of her, he became more manly than before. "Yes, what, are you not welcome?" Zhu Mengyo tilted her head and smiled mischievously. "How could that be?" Welcome, absolutely welcome, you are welcome to live here for a while." Qinzu waved his hand hurriedly, indicating that he was absolutely welcome, and at the same time stepped forward to take the pink suitcase in Zhu Mengyo's hand. "I'm wondering if you're jealous. I'm here. Can you please take care of the feelings of a single guy?" Surui looked at the couple next to her who were in love and couldn't help but say something sour. She felt as if her beloved thing had been taken away by someone. "Then you should find one too. With a beauty like Su, there should be a long queue of suitors." Qinzu smiled and complimented Surui, who had changed out of her OL outfit and put on a linen dress. But he really didn't lie. After changing out of her OL outfit, although she didn't have the aura of a strong woman, the linen dress showed off her perfect upper body. With her delicate facial features and brown hair, she was no less beautiful than Zhu Mengyo. When two such beautiful women walked together, most people really didn't have the courage to come up and talk to them. "HMPH, you're good at talking. My suitors can circle Jiangnan. Okay, Xiaorui, let's go. His classmates are still waiting over there." Zhu Mengyo looked over there, and saw 7 or 8 pairs of eyes staring at this side. She was a little embarrassed and urged her girlfriend to go faster. When Qinzu came closer with the suitcase, the class monitor Linzu stared at Zhu Mengyo with some doubts for a while, and then said with a smirk, "I say, Qinzu, don't you introduce these two beauties to our old classmates?" Looking at the opposite side, the 7 or 8 pairs of eyes, including the 3 animals in his dormitory, stared at him without blinking. Qinzu felt a little scared. "Ahem, come, let me introduce you. This is our senior, Zhu Mengyo from the Department of Tourism Management. The one next to her is her friend, Surui, a famous beautiful lawyer from Jiangnan. Wow, senior, if she's Zhu Mengyo, one of the top 10 beauties in our school." Linzu waited until Qinzu finished introducing her, and then she couldn't wait to ask. "What? You said she is one of the top 10 beauties, the most mysterious Zhu Mengyo?" Wanming looked at Linzu in astonishment, staring at her in disbelief. Linzu ignored Wanming's question, staring at Zhu Mengyo without blinking, waiting for her answer. Ha ha, that's all the favor of my classmates. Zhu Mengyo looked at Lin Yu in surprise, smiled gently and nodded. She was on the list of the top 10 beauties in school, but because she lived a secluded life, not many people knew her. Wow, it's really you. I said I was familiar with you. I saw you when school just started. Lin Yu looked at Zhu Mengyo excitedly. She was her idol at the beginning. The three guys in the dormitory looked at each other, their calm eyes were filled with endless gossip. Tell me the truth, old man. When did you hook up with such a beautiful girl? Fatty Wangmin hugged Qin Zhu's shoulders and whispered in his ear. Although he had spoken to Zhu Mengyo, he had never seen her. They had agreed to meet at the airport, but because Su Rui bought a first-class ticket, they went directly through the VIP channel. When she just graduated, she was in the same company as me. Qin Zhu looked confused. Zhu Mengyo was the school belle Zhu Mengyo? He had never thought about it. Although he felt that Zhu Mengyo was very beautiful, he never thought that she would be a school belle. School belle. That is the symbol of a goddess, and it is also a synonym for being out of reach for otakus. Okay, Qin Zhu. You haven't introduced her to us yet? Zhu Mengyo, who was a little uncomfortable with the hot eyes of the crowd, pulled Qin Zhu who was in a daze beside her and whispered. Thanks to Kaian Tu by Jin, Fengxia AI, Zixian, Home Chain Manbu. 193052577 and Concert Boy for their support. Today is the first update. Ahem, well, because Liu Yun's reader account promoted this book too much, it was banned by Kidian. The author account cannot post on Kidian, so I can't reply to the comments in the book review area for the time being. Thanks to friends who support Liu Yun. Liu Yun will work hard to write and strive to update more. Chapter 163 The Shipyard. Oh, okay, come, let me introduce them to you. Qin Zhu suddenly came back to his senses from his complicated thoughts, and was stunned for a moment before he reacted. He smiled and pointed at the curious Liang and the other man, and introduced them. The big guy is Liang, the leader of our dormitory, and the one next to him is his girlfriend Wan. After Zhu Mengyo greeted the two, Qin Zhu pointed at the fat man next to him and said with a smile. This is the second in the dormitory, Wan Ming, nicknamed Wan Pangzi. Call me the second brother, and I will be angry if you call me the second again. Qin Zhu ignored Wan Ming's complaints and continued. The one over there is the fourth Li Kaiang and his girlfriend Zhu, the one over there is the class monitor Lin Zhu, and the one over there is Wang Xiao and Zhu Lerong. Zhu Mengyo smiled and greeted everyone one by one. Because they were all from the same school and were all young people, everyone quickly put aside the alienation brought by the school beauties and became familiar with each other. Including Su Rui, the usually strong and beautiful lawyer, she also took off her disguise at this moment and chatted happily with everyone. Okay, let's go back to the hotel and take a rest. We're all tired after flying for so long. Qin Zhu spoke up when everyone had finished talking. Seeing everyone nodded, Qin Zhu led everyone to the side of night the 15th. Dale saw Qin Zhu and his men come in, opened the car door, got out of the car and helped everyone open the door. Damn. Lao-san. Such a hot foreign girl, where did you find her? Qin Zhu's forehead was immediately black. He knew it was the wretched guy Lao from the voice. He looked at Zhu Mengyo with some concern, and seeing that she didn't react, he said, This is my bodyguard, from the American Female Special Forces. The fat man realized that Zhu Mengyo was next to him, smiled awkwardly, and secretly gave Qin Zhu a thumbs up. Oh, I didn't expect that the landlord Qin started to have female bodyguards now. Zhu Mengyo didn't say anything, but Su Rui, the beautiful lawyer, spoke with a teasing look on her face. Qin Zhu had no choice but to explain the whole story to them. Now everyone nodded in understanding. Even Su Rui snorted and said nothing. I say, third brother, you're a rich man, why don't you buy a better car, such as Rolls-Royce, Maserati, etc.? What's the point of buying a cheap car? Wan Ming originally just wanted to change the subject, but after staring at the logo of the night the 15th for a long time, he went through the logos of the known famous cars in his mind and didn't find that car in front of him. Qin Zhu, your car should be the night the 15th, right? It does look like an armored vehicle. Zhu Mengyo stared at the logo, then looked at Qin Zhu with a smile and asked. Yes, that's right, it's the night the 15th, Mengyo, how did you know? Qin Zhu looked at Zhu Mengyo in surprise. He didn't expect that she would know the brand of this car. My brother likes these special vehicles, and I heard him talk about it by chance. Night the 15th? What brand is that? Wan Ming looked at Qin Zhu blankly, then turned to look at the others who were also blankly, and asked with some confusion. It's a very famous brand that specializes in producing this kind of armored off-road vehicle. You can find out by searching on the internet. Kinzu explained a few words casually, and then urged everyone to get on the bus. Fortunately, although it was a bit crowded, there was still room for everyone to sit. Soon, he brought everyone to the hotel, and Kinzu directly opened a few suites and settled everyone down first. After all, it was noon, and it would take more than 3 hours to get back to the ranch. Everyone had been on a flight all night, and if they didn't eat something, they would starve. Everyone just eat something at the hotel at noon, and then sleep or go out for a walk. Everyone can make their own arrangements. After Kinzu put away the luggage with everyone, he told everyone about the next arrangements. Okay, hurry up, I'm almost starving and sleepy. Surui rubbed her stomach and urged with some complaints. Okay, then you guys go back and take a shower first, I'll ask the hotel to send food to your room. Seeing that everyone had no objection, Kinzu made the decision directly. Then while everyone went back to their rooms to wash up, Kinzu called the hotel's food delivery service. Kinzu, let's go to sleep for a while, and arrange activities after we wake up. After eating the hotel's food, Zumengyo looked at Kinzu and said softly, well, you guys go to rest first, and call me when you wake up. After everyone went back to their rooms to adjust to the jet lag, Kinzu got up and walked out of the hotel. Accompanied by Dale, he came to the Dutch shipyard in Queens, New York. Mr. Clean, please come this way, your decking no. One has docked at the dock. Albert was waiting at the door of the shipyard. When he saw Kinzu get off the car, he hurried to greet him. Oh, I'm looking forward to it. Kinzu smiled faintly and motioned Albert to lead the way. Now he has more and more of the temperament of a wealthy man. Albert took Kinzu to a closed dock next to him. The dock was a high-pile dock, the same as the one in Kinzu's ranch, but the dock extended more than 100 meters into the sea, while his dock only extended 30 meters into the sea. Looking at the pure white fishing boat docked next to the dock, it was like a battleship, more than 50 meters long, and the height above the water was as high as several floors. The 4 standard Chinese characters no. 1 were also sprayed with black paint. Under the Chinese characters was a string of English names. Kinzu was very satisfied. Regardless of what was inside, these few big characters alone were enough to prove that Dutch shipyard had really put in a lot of effort. Mr. Clean, please come this way. Do you want to go up and take a look now? Of course, I want to see my first fishing boat now. Kinzu said decisively, and took the lead towards the boat. After arriving on the boat, Albert began to explain to Kinzu. Mr. Clean, look here, whether it is the gallows or the trawl, even the cable, we have used the best for you. Kinzu looked at the places Albert pointed out, but didn't see any difference, but he was an outsider after all, so he just let him say whatever he wanted. When he got inside, Kinzu had some say. If he saw something that was not placed in a way that suited his habits, he would directly ask someone to come and modify it, and there must not be any mistakes. Mr. Clean, don't worry, everything here is in accordance with the contract, all the famous brands, even the flush toilet, it's enough for my 2 months' salary. Albert said, shrugging helplessly, looking extremely frustrated. Thanks to Egyptian and Marionette for their support, and thanks to Marionette for becoming a disciple of this book. Chapter 164 Deki no. 1 Part 2 Kinzu walked into the cabin with Albert. Albert was beside him and continued to introduce this fishing boat, which was not very big for Dutch shipyard. The interior of the Deki no. 1 has 2 bedrooms and a living room. The area of the living room is about 50 square meters, which is not too big. But Kinzu was satisfied. After all, his fishing boat cannot be compared with the Ocean Star. It is a professional cruise ship, and the area on the ship is more than 2 or 3 times larger than his. There are 2 sets of sofas and a rectangular wooden coffee table in the living room. As Albert introduced, the sofas are all leather. On the ceiling of the living room, there are 2 crystal chandeliers emitting dazzling light, which look extremely luxurious. In the 4 corners of the living room, there are also small lights to supplement the dead corners that the headlights cannot reach. Albert, won't it fall down? Looking at the huge crystal chandelier above his head, Kinzu looked at Albert on the side with some concern. Mr. Clean, don't worry, it won't happen. Our company uses anti-vibration lampshades to ensure that the interior furnishings will not be affected even if there is strong winds during the voyage. That's good. Kinzu nodded with confidence. He still trusted Albert. Walking around the winding staircase, Kinzu came upstairs. The bedrooms were arranged here, and they were all set up on the side close to the side of the ship, so that you can see the sea when you open the window. The interior was just as Albert introduced, with extremely luxurious decoration. The gorgeous crystal chandelier was quietly hanging on the top of the cabin. The large and comfortable round bed was placed in the center in the most conspicuous position. After taking off his shoes, Kinzu stepped on the thick and gorgeous wool carpet, walked into the bedroom, and looked around. There were wardrobes, shoe cabinets, and bedside tables. All the necessary furniture was available. There was even a black ultra-thin LCD TV hanging quietly on the wall directly opposite the bed. Looking at the LCD TV with more than 50 screens, Kinzu cast a puzzled look at Albert beside him. Seeing the puzzlement in Kinzu's eyes, Albert smiled and exclaimed, "Mr. Clean, this is a satellite TV that can be directly connected to the satellite. Even if you're on the ocean, you can still watch satellite channels from all over the world." He nodded suddenly. It turned out that this was the legendary satellite TV. Touching his chin, Kinzu suddenly thought of a routine that often appears in TV dramas. So, should there be another one? As if seeing through Kinzu's inner thoughts, Albert took out a domestic mobile phone from behind and handed it over, saying, "Mr. Clean, this is an encrypted satellite phone that can make calls around the world. It is equipped on the ship, but there is another one on the ship." Sure enough, it was similar to the plot in the TV series. Every time you see a bad guy driving a yacht away, there is always a satellite phone on the ship. He took over this mobile phone that looked extremely old and exactly the same as the one in the TV. Kinzu smiled and said, "Thank you very much, Mr. Albert. I haven't used this kind of mobile phone yet. Mr. Keen is too polite. You can get whatever you want with just one phone call." Albert complimented with a smile. Kinzu smiled and said nothing. He stepped on the thick and soft wool carpet, walked to the window and looked out. The calm sea surface, illuminated by the midday sun, looked even more blue. "Mr. Clean, the glass of this porthole is made of the product of a subsidiary of our Duck Industries." Seeing Kinzu's indifferent expression, Albert smiled and continued, "This subsidiary specializes in providing bulletproof glass for the military." "You mean, this is bulletproof glass?" Kinzu pointed at the porthole in front of him, which was more than 1 meter high, in surprise, and looked at Albert, who was smiling proudly next to him. Asked, "That's right. Except for the heavy anti-material sniper rifle like Barrett, no other rifle can penetrate it." Albert looked at the porthole in front of him with pride. This was what Douglas personally brought back from the company. Originally, the leaders of the company didn't want to give it. What's the use of installing such good glass on your fishing boat? But Douglas is the general manager of the head office. Who dares not to approve when the second big boss comes to the door in person? It can be said that the value of Kinzu's boat is far more than the price Kinzu paid. Kinzu nodded and said nothing. He knew this in his heart, but since it was someone's good intention, he just accepted it. Anyway, he would make up for it when the time comes. Back in the living room, Kinzu sat down on the soft leather sofa, motioned Albert to sit down casually, and continued to listen to his introduction. Albert was not polite either. Perhaps Europeans and Americans don't know what politeness is. After casually finding a sofa to sit down, he continued, "Mr. Clean, the storage capacity of your deck one is 480 meters 3 of fish tank, 176 meters 3 of fuel tank, and 48 meters 3 of freshwater tank. Each time it goes out to sea, it can last for 60 days and can bring back 400 tons of fish." Kinzu nodded with satisfaction. This is already very good. As far as he knows, it has almost reached the standard of ocean-going fishing vessels. After staying on the boat with Albert for a while, Kinzu got up and prepared to return to the hotel. He took out the checkbook from his arms and wrote a check for the remaining amount and handed it over. "Now, this boat belongs to me completely, right?" "Yes, it's a great honor, Mr. Clean. I hope there will be opportunities for cooperation next time." Albert reached out to take the check and said with a smile, "Of course, Mr. Albert, you haven't handed over my old boat to me yet." Kinzu curled his lips. Did this guy forget what he promised? Reaching out and patting his head, Albert smiled apologetically and said, "I'm so sorry, Mr. Clean, please come this way. The several boats I promised you are ready." Kinzu smiled with satisfaction and said, "No need to look at it. I still trust Mr. Albert. How about this, you just send it to my manor tomorrow?" Albert nodded. Anyway, these things were paid for by his boss, and it had nothing to do with him. By the way, Albert, do you have sailors here now? My crew didn't come with us this time. Could you please help me find a few sailors to drive this boat back to my manor? Qinzu touched his nose and felt a little embarrassed. Buying a boat is almost a waste to this sales manager. Thanks to 10-year-old Bug, Fengxiai, Feilong Xiaoshan, and several big names for their rewards and support. Chapter 165. Visit New York. No problem, I'll arrange crew for you right away. Do you want to go with me on the boat? Albert agreed immediately. This was indeed a small matter. Anyway, there were many crew members in the shipyard. Well, thank you. It just so happens that I have a few friends from China coming today, and the car can't accommodate them. So, let's set off tomorrow morning. Qinzu thought about it and said. After confirming the time with Albert, Qinzu took Dale, who had been silent all the way, off the fishing boat. He looked at Dale behind him in a strange way. Today, she seemed to be more silent than usual. She didn't talk much, but now she had no sense of existence at all. Dale, what's wrong? After a slight pause, Dale came back to her senses from her thoughts, looked at Qinzu in front of her, and asked a strange question. Is everything okay? What happened? Qinzu was choked by Dale's question. He touched his nose and asked, you seem absent-minded all the way. Is everything okay? Oh. Nothing. Thank you for your concern, boss. Dale smiled and replied lightly. Then he opened the car door and sat directly in the driver's seat. Looking at Dale's sheet back, Qinzu shrugged helplessly and simply stopped thinking about it. He opened the back door and sat in. When they returned to the hotel, everyone hadn't gotten up yet. It seemed that they were really tired. So Qinzu went back to his room directly, lay on the soft leather sofa in the hotel, and took a nap. In a daze, Qinzu felt that something was added to his body. He opened his confused sleepy eyes and sat up. Looking at Zhu Mengyo, who was startled by his sudden standing up, Qinzu yawned and said lazily, Mengyo, are you awake? Why don't you sleep a little longer? Zhu Mengyo patted her chest lightly, glared at this guy with some reproach, and said, don't you see what time it is now? We can have dinner soon. What time is it? Qinzu was stunned. It seemed to be only 2 or 3 o'clock when he went to bed. What time can it be now? Zhu Mengyo took 2 steps forward and came to Qinzu's side. She stretched out her white and tender jade hand, pointed at an exquisite lady's watch on it, and said unhappily, it's past 5 o'clock now. You can sleep more than us. Don't go to bed, what if you catch a cold? Qinzu sweated a little. He didn't expect that 2 or 3 hours would pass after just a short nap. Could it be because of excessive exercise yesterday? Just as he was about to sit up straight, he found that there was a thin quilt covering him. Needless to say, this must be the one Zhu Mengyo had just covered him. Turning his head to look at Zhu Mengyo, who was staring at him, Qinzu reached out and grabbed the white and tender hand, and said softly, thank you. Sudden attack by Qinzu, Zhu Mengyo subconsciously wanted to withdraw her hand, but she failed after trying several times, so she simply stopped struggling and let him hold her hand. Hearing Qinzu's thanks, her face slightly reddened and she said, it's okay, you have to be careful in the future, you can't sleep like this anymore. He nodded hurriedly. Seeing that her face was getting redder and redder, Qinzu was afraid that she was shy and would be shy soon, so he quickly changed the subject and asked, where are the guys? Haven't they gotten up yet? They are up and packing their things in the room. By the way, when are we going to the ranch? Sure enough, as soon as the topic was changed, Zhu Mengyo subconsciously forgot that she was still being held by Qinzu. She was excited and began to look forward to the next trip to the ranch. When do you want to go? It doesn't matter, it's all right. I don't know what they think. Just when she wanted to ask Qinzu to leave now, she changed her mind and thought that Qinzu had friends and classmates here, so she changed her mind subconsciously. Then go and call them all over, and we'll discuss where to go next. After careful consideration, Qinzu decided to listen to everyone's opinions. After all, they are customers, and customers are God. Although they are not customers, they can still be considered half God. Reluctantly letting go of the tightly grasped little hand, Qinzu asked Zhu Mengyo to gather everyone. He also had to wash up, and his tired face after just getting up was 10 years older. When Zhu Mengyo agreed and started to call everyone to gather, Qinzu hurried to the bathroom to solve his physiological problems and straighten his messy hair. Before Qinzu came out of the bathroom, Anming's loud roar came from outside. I say, third brother, you are so mean. We came all the way here, and you let us watch you sleep? If it weren't for my sister-in-law stopping me, I would have come in and killed you. Hey, where are you? I am here, I am here. I say, second brother, can't you just be quiet for a while? I asked you to rest because I was afraid you would be tired. Come on, everyone, sit down. Kinzu smiled and nodded at everyone, and quickly asked everyone to sit down and talk. After smiling and greeting Kinzu, everyone found a place to sit down. Surui looked at Bangmin beside her and said unhappily, Fatty, what are you talking about? What sister-in-law or not? We haven't even started yet. The fat man touched his head awkwardly and smiled at Zumengyo, who was blushing beside him. However, after a while, the few of them were familiar with each other, so they retorted. Well, sister, what you said is wrong. The person involved has not said anything, why are you screaming? Surui was choked by this sentence. This eloquent and beautiful lawyer was speechless. She glared at her best friend who was blushing beside her. We agreed to be reserved. Ahem, no, let's discuss what to do next. Should we go around New York or go directly to the ranch? Seeing the laughter of several people, Kinzu coughed awkwardly and interrupted. Of course we should go to the ranch. We came all the way here, isn't it just to go to the ranch? Surui was the first to express her opinion. She has been to New York many times. What is there to see? Zumengyo was speechless. She rolled her eyes at her best friend who was very excited. Where did this guy's usually smart brain go? He looked at Bangming and the others opposite him and found that they were discussing in a low voice and no one was talking. He smiled lightly and took the initiative to say, let's go shopping in New York for a night. I haven't really visited New York yet. And it's not safe to drive at night. Let's go to the ranch tomorrow morning. Yeah, if we have time, let's go to New York for a walk at night. The second oldest, Bangming, is always so positive. He is different from the eldest and the third oldest. He is the type who is very outgoing and talkative. Thanks to Fengxiai, Concert Boy, Okina Mountain Old Driver 233, and several other big names for their support. Thanks to Gchiki for the support of 500 starting coins. This is to make up for yesterday's update. CSS Kushanda Western Novela on Canal Distinta Mundo Fanfic Novelas, Significat Lo Descarga and Y Subir and Sinisfuetzos Invitamas Cordialmente Visitar Nuestro Canal. Mundo Fanfic Novelas all encontras la versión original de esta historia y podrás explorar muchas otras novelas de diversos narradores. Te esperamos para sumergirte en un mundo de novelas incredibles. Chapter 166. Visiting New York, Part 2. The eldest brother Liang and the fourth brother also nodded frequently. Indeed, it was their first time to come to New York. Of course, they wanted to experience the charm of the world-famous Big Apple. As for the squad leader and several other ladies, they did not express their opinions. Anyway, the opinions they wanted to express had prevailed now, so they just listened. Okay, let's go out for a walk first. The night view of New York is also very good. Looking at everyone depressed, Surui raised her hands helplessly and surrendered. Who made her think it was not thoughtful? Not everyone has the opportunity to go abroad. Since the opinions have been unified, Kinzu stood up and announced the adjournment of this temporary meeting. Everyone at the meeting went back to pack up and meet in the hotel lobby in 10 minutes. When everyone changed their clothes and went downstairs, Kinzu had asked Dale to drive the night the 15th to the door of the hotel. Mengyo, will it be a bit crowded? Do you want the hotel to prepare another car? Kinzu looked at everyone, a little worried that they would feel too crowded. After all, there are so many people in a car. Although the night the 15th has a large space, it will definitely give people a feeling of crowding. Anyway, he was not short of money now, so Kinzu prepared to ask the hotel to send a car to follow behind. Nodding, Zumengyo said, then let the hotel prepare another car, it's a bit crowded. So when everyone set off, a stretched Mercedes followed behind night the 15th. The eldest and fourth couples, Bang Xiao and Zhao Qian sat in the car behind. Bang Xiao and Zhao Qian were the two classmates who came with the monitor this time. Bang Xiao and Kinzu were in college, and their relationship was second only to the brothers in the dormitory. It's just that they didn't contact each other much after graduation. Now it seems that he is a little bit uncomfortable facing himself. Kinzu knew that this was an inevitable result. After all, he is now a rich man, and fortunately his brothers have not changed much, otherwise he would be depressed. Because Kinzu was not very familiar with New York, the hotel was very considerate and provided them with a tour guide. Kinzu was very confused at first. He hit 2 cars, so what was the point of providing a tour guide? The tour guide explained on the road, and the car behind couldn't hear it. However, all these doubts disappeared after seeing the driver of the Mercedes behind. Because Kinzu saw that the driver of the car was a black man, a black driver. With a black driver who claimed to be comparable to BJ's brother, is there still a need for a tour guide? Mr. Clean, please believe all the rumors you have heard about this city, because this city is more bizarre than those rumors. Because the residents of New York come from many countries, as long as you take a leisurely trip and have an open mind, you will experience the unique style of New York. Listening to the white girl named Pauline Cocker in the front row, introducing the city of New York to them in slightly stiff Chinese, Kinzu felt a sense of pride. When will all the hotels in the world be equipped with professional tour guides specifically for Chinese tourists? That will be the best manifestation of the country's strength. Whenever I see a certain scenic spot recruiting tour guides, what level of English is required? What is recruited in a certain place, what level of English is required? Kinzu feels very annoyed. Of course, this is directly related to the fact that he failed the English level 4 exam in times. There are many attractions in New York City, and there are attractions in every block, but the most famous tourist attractions are concentrated in Midtown, and some are in the commercial center, such as the Statue of Liberty and the New York Stock Exchange. Night the 15th soon came to the first attraction in the plan, the famous Statue of Liberty. This huge statue means liberty enlightening the world and is a symbol of the United States and the most famous symbol of New York. The statue is 46 meters high, 93 meters including the base, weighs 225 tons, 490,000 pounds, and is cast in metal. The entire bronze statue is made of 120 tons of steel as the skeleton, 80 tons of copper sheets as the outer skin, and is assembled and fixed on the bracket with 300,000 rivets. The spiral staircase inside the statue allows visitors to climb to its head, which is equivalent to climbing a 12-story building. Due to its height, an elevator was later installed from the base to facilitate tourists to go up and down. The Statue of Liberty is placed on a 46-meter-high concrete base, which was built by the famous Joseph Pulitzer with a fund of $100,000. The base has become the American Immigration History Museum. On the granite base of the statue is engraved a popular poem, The New Colossus by American poet Emma Lazarus. Let those who are tired and penniless after a long journey because they long to breathe the air of freedom, lean on each other and throw themselves into my arms. I stand at the Golden Gate, holding high the light of freedom. The Statue of Liberty wears ancient Greek-style clothing and a shining crown on her head. The 7 spikes represent the 7 continents of the world. In her right hand, she holds a torch symbolizing freedom, which is 12.8 meters long. 12 people can stand on the edge of the torch. In her left hand, she holds a legal book with the words July 4, 1776 engraved on the cover, symbolizing the Declaration of Independence signed on this day. Under her feet are broken handcuffs, shackles and chains, symbolizing freedom from the constraints of tyranny. And her figure is like an ancient Greek beauty, making people feel friendly and natural. When night falls, the lights on the statue's base shine upward, making the goddess look like a pale green jade sculpture. Looking at the world-famous statue in front of him, which is shrouded in the night lights and appears to be shining. Kinzu thought it was just like that, just like the big Buddhas in the temples in China, it was just a belief. However, Surui, the beautiful lawyer, and the eldest brother were very interested in this. They took pictures with the Statue of Liberty one by one, and finally Kinzu became interested. He pulled Zoom and Gyo to stand together and let the second brother take a picture. Later, Kinzu and his friends followed the tour guide to the famous Chinatown, which is the largest Chinese community outside of Asia, with more than 150,000 Chinese living here. Touring Chinatown, feeling the lively environment around, looking at the roasted whole pig hanging at the door of the butcher shop. Smelling the smell of fresh fish and roasted persimmons in the air. Kinzu and his friends suddenly felt their stomachs growling. Do you want to eat something before walking around? Kinzu suggested, looking at Zumengyo who was holding her stomach. Well, forget it, let's go for a while and find a Western restaurant. After all, everyone is from China, so let's eat something new. Holding her stomach for a while, she looked at the boss and the others, and whispered in Kinzu's ear. Kinzu thought about it and it was true. It was not enough to eat Chinese food in China. He couldn't take them to eat Chinese food in the United States. Kinzu smacked his lips, swallowed hard, turned around and led everyone to the next attraction. First update today. Chapter 167. Bernardine returns after visiting the Empire State Building, Times Square, and the United Nations headquarters. Qin and his companions came to the food street in New York. New York food. There is a certain culture and art here. This is the birthplace of hot dogs. Here you can see hot dogs being sold everywhere. Another famous dish here is bagels. Bagels originated in Europe. In the 19th century, bagels were the most popular. Once you have tasted bagels, it is difficult to be interested in other delicacies. This is a common method. First, ordinary fermented dough is made into a circle, then steamed for a period of time, and then baked. Some auxiliary materials are added on top for decoration, such as sesame or onion slices, etc. It looks beautiful and tastes delicious, and is favored by many people. The tour guide swallowed her saliva involuntarily when she introduced this. Seeing Qin and the others looking at her, this cheerful white girl blushed and exclaimed, "I'm sorry, I haven't eaten my mother's bagels for a long time. My mother's bagels were my favorite when I was a child." "That's easy. When you go back on the weekend, let your mother make them for you." Surui looked at the white girl with freckles on her face and said with a smile. His face darkened slightly, and Coke said sadly, "My mother died when I was a child. Sorry, I didn't mean it." Surui apologized quickly. She didn't expect that this cheerful white girl in front of her had such a family background. "It doesn't matter." Coca smiled and said with all his strength, "Have you decided where to have dinner?" Qin and Zhu Mengyo looked at each other. Zhu Mengyo stopped Surui from speaking and spread her hands, saying, "I don't care. You should focus on Liang and the others first." Surui glared at her best friend who valued love over friendship and snorted softly. She didn't say anything more. With such a best friend, she had already accepted her fate. Looking at the two of them with amusement, Qin turned his head to look at the brothers in the dormitory and said, "What do you want to eat?" "It doesn't matter, as long as I am full." This was said by the eldest brother Liang. "It doesn't matter, as long as it tastes good." This was said by the second brother, the fat guy. "It doesn't matter, the most expensive one is fine." This was said by the fourth brother Li Kaiang, who usually looked the most harmless. "Yes, the most expensive one is fine." This woke up the two beasts, the eldest and the second brother, and they immediately changed their minds and shouted in unison. Looking at the beauties laughing beside him, Qin patted his head weakly. "Coke, do you have any good recommendations?" Coke held his chin and thought for a while, then said, "Mr. Clean, the Bernardine is very good. It is a highly rated gourmet restaurant in this area. The food inside is all New York style. It is also the best gourmet restaurant here." "Hey, the Bernardine. Such a familiar name." Qin said delightedly, as if he had heard the name of this restaurant somewhere. After thinking for a long time, he patted his head. "Isn't this the Michelin 3-star restaurant that I went to when I came to New York last time? Okay, then let's go to this one. Since we are so destined, let's go again." So Qin made the decision directly. Soon, the car came to pick up everyone and drove towards the destination. On the way, Qin called the restaurant in advance to reserve seats for 10 people. As a result, the girl on the other end of the phone told him in fluent Chinese, "No more. No more seats. This one is not easy to book, Qin. How about we change to another one?" Zhu Mengyo was closer to Qin and asked after hearing the voice on the phone. "It's okay, you can take care of it." Looking at the hung-up call, Qin smiled. "No more?" He directly called Jennifer and briefly explained the matter. After Jennifer smiled and said that it was no problem, Qin put down the phone. As a result, the phone just hung up, and less than a minute later, it rang again. "Hello, sir, the 10 seats you reserved have been reserved for you. When will you come?" Hearing the awkward voice of the girl on the other end of the phone, Qin smiled and said, "About 10 minutes, we're on the way." "Okay, sir, just tell me your name when you get here." After hanging up the phone, Qin looked at the surprised people and explained with a smile, "America is a country where money is supreme. Here, as long as you have money, there is nothing you can't do." Soon, the car arrived at the door of the Bernardine. After the car stopped, Qin asked everyone to get off. Originally, the tour guide and Dale were determined not to go in, but under Qin's toughness, they went in to eat together. When they came to the front desk of the restaurant, Qin reported his name, and immediately a 30-year-old foreign horse came over. "Mr. Clean, I am Heidi Strong, the lobby manager here. Welcome to Le Bernardine, please come this way." Following Heidi to the seat, Kinzu was sighing in his heart. Why didn't he ask Jennifer to help last time? This treatment is awesome. The first thing that came up was the free opening dish, a small gift for every guest present. The ingredients were very fresh, and there was snow white crushed ice under the shells to keep it refreshing. From the side dishes to the sauce, they all had a very light taste. Then the main course began, the first of which was a big dish, yellowfin tuna. This dish was first pounded to make the fish meat softer, then cut very thinly and spread layer by layer on the crisped baguette bread. It looked like fish bones. Smiley face. Add extra virgin olive oil and chopped chives. It was simply melt in the mouth, delicate enough for a baby to eat, and the smooth and non-greasy taste was something that only extra virgin olive oil could achieve. The second course, grilled octopus, served with Chinese bean paste, fresh pear juice, hot and sour sauce, and purple basil. The Chinese sauce suited Kinzu's taste very well, because Kinzu loves spicy food. What Kinzu admired most was how Eric Ripert, chef, could make the chewy octopus look like pudding. He was completely puzzled. The third course, raw lobster, freshly squeezed orange juice, and palm hearts. The lobster was very fresh and crisp. The various flavors were perfectly mixed together, but they would not lose their own flavor. It was a very gentle dish. The fourth course, grilled wild sea bass with truffle sauce and a squeezed corn roll. Such a thick piece of fish, but without a single bone. Although it was grilled, the meat was not dry at all. The fifth course, mackerel and Nebraska RP beef, served with fried eggplant hearts and seaben sauce. I don't know what the exact Chinese name is, Mr. Coatman's garlic sauce, and red wine sauce. Let me tell you the origin of this beef. The Argyll cattle breed grown in Australia is called Wagyu beef in the market. Because it is cooked cattle fed with wheat, corn and other grains for more than 50 days, its meat is rich in fat and evenly distributed, and it tastes soft, tender, elastic and rich in nutrition. From Bedu. The last thing that came up was the dessert. Basil ice cream, cherry tomatoes, peach juice and blackberries. The refreshing basil, like a breeze, took away the remaining greasiness in the mouth. The skin of the cherry tomatoes was also carefully and perfectly removed. This is the second update of yesterday. It's a bit watery, don't throw rotten eggs, but I'm hungry after looking up information. Chapter 168. The first voyage of the Deki number 1. Burp, I'm so full. I'm telling you, third brother, your life is too corrupt, you have to take me with you. After leaving the restaurant, Ironman burped and complained about Kinzu's corrupt life. Corruption, I don't eat out every day. He looked at this guy unhappily. He was the one who ate the most just now. He hadn't eaten much of the lobster before it was gone. Well, I'm a little full. How about we take a walk? Zumengyo rubbed her bloated belly and suggested while looking at the two people who were laughing. Yeah, I agree. I remember that this place is not far from the hotel. Let's walk back. If you don't exercise after dinner, you'll gain weight. Class monitor Linzu echoed, and after saying this, all the girls present nodded in agreement, even Surui, the barrister, nodded in agreement. Kinzu couldn't help but complain deeply in his heart. Don't they know that exercising after a meal will cause gastroptosis? However, seeing that everyone was in high spirits, Kinzu did not spoil everyone's fun and asked Dale and the black driver of the hotel to drive back first. Walking on the streets of New York, looking at the bright lights and the endless flow of cars around, especially the bustling crowd at night, Kinzu deeply felt two completely different feelings from when he was at the ranch. Kinzu, what's wrong? Looking at the silent Kinzu beside him, Zumengyo turned her head and asked with some concern. Looking at the curious and concerned expression on Zumengyo's face, Kinzu was slightly moved in his heart. Nothing, I just feel that it's a little different from when I was at the ranch. When I was at the ranch, I was probably sitting on the sofa and teasing two little huskies. Oh, that kind of life should be very comfortable. I can't wait to go to the ranch to take a look. With her hands crossed in front of her, Zumengyo followed Kinzu and walked slowly forward. In her mind, she imagined Kinzu's usual life. In the magnificent living room, under the orange-yellow light, on the soft sofa, a tall man lazily sat on it and watched TV, occasionally teasing the two little huskies that were turning around in front of him. Will he feel lonely? Ha, it's over tomorrow, just don't be bored by then. Kinzu couldn't help scratching Zumengyo's upturned little nose and said with a smile. Humph, don't scratch my nose, it will collapse. Frowning her little eyebrows, Zumengyo threw away her thoughts and looked at Kinzu with some resentment. Hey, are you two done yet? We've already walked past the hotel. Suruli, who was following behind the two of them, looked at the two people who didn't stop at the door of the hotel and were still flirting, and shouted very weakly. Kinzu came back to his senses and looked at the hotel behind him in surprise. It shouldn't be like this. I clearly remembered that I only walked a few steps, so how could I get there? Ahem, well, let's go in quickly. Seeing the 7 or 8 pairs of eyes staring at him, even Kinzu, who was thick-skinned, couldn't hold it in anymore. He pulled up Zumengyo, who was blushing beside him, and walked into the hotel without looking back. Suddenly, the heartless laughter of Lao Oda came from behind him. Kinzu muttered in his heart, "Fatty, wait until we get to the ranch and see how I'll deal with you." Ban Ming, who was laughing at Kinzu wantonly, felt a chill for no reason. He tightened his clothes and turned back to say, "Let's go back and rest. It's a little cold tonight." The next morning, before 6 o'clock, Kinzu climbed out of the soft big bed in the hotel. He hurried to the bathroom to wash up, came to the bedside to pick up the phone, and called everyone. He thought he could wake up a few people to satisfy his own evil taste, but he was shocked to find that they had already gotten up. He raised his hand to check the time. It was right. It was 6 o'clock in the morning in the United States. When did these animals become so active? Shaking his head in confusion, Kinzu opened the door and walked out. After everyone came out of the room, they walked towards the hotel cafeteria together. "I say, second brother, when did you become so active? You got up at 6 o'clock. Looking at Ban Ming, who was wearing a brand new denim suit beside him, Kinzu couldn't help but ask curiously. "Of course I have to be active. I'm going to ride a horse today. Go. As he said that, Ban Ming squatted slightly and made a posture of dancing a horse. Covering his face, Kinzu quietly moved to the side. "I don't know this funny guy, really." After having breakfast at the hotel, Kinzu led everyone to the door of the hotel. At this time, Dale and the hotel's Mercedes-Benz were already waiting at the door. "Kinzu, why don't we squeeze in? Do we need the hotel to send a car to take us?" Zumengyo looked at the hotel's Mercedes-Benz and couldn't help but whisper to Kinzu. "Night the 15th can still sit if we squeeze in. Yesterday, it was just for the convenience of playing. Haha, don't worry, this is just to take us to the dock. We'll take a boat back today. Besides, even if the hotel sends a car, what's the problem? Are you afraid that I can't afford it?" Kinzu pinched her upturned nose with a smile, and swore that it was not intentional, even though she took the initiative to send it. Waving away Kinzu's unlushing claw, Zumengyo automatically ignored the second half of Kinzu's words and asked curiously, "Take a boat? Is there a passenger ship from New York to your ranch?" Kinzu smiled and did not satisfy Zumengyo's little curiosity. He took everyone to the car and went straight to the dock. After arriving at the dock, Albert was already waiting there. Kinzu stepped forward and shook hands with him. Looking at Albert with red eyes, Kinzu said in surprise, "Albert, why are you here so early? Can't you just let the boat wait here?" "Nothing, I just happened to be going to work, so I came to see you on the way. Mr. Clean, please come this way." As he said that, Albert yawned and led everyone to the ready-to-go deck in No. 1. "Mr. Clean, how is it? I specifically checked the customs of China and learned that there will be a ceremony when you buy things." Looking at the fishing boat surrounded by colorful flags and the people busy arranging and preparing firecrackers around it, Kinzu couldn't help but look at Albert deeply and was a little moved. Looking at his red eyes, Kinzu knew that this guy had not slept all night, and the colorful flags on the boat and the surrounding arrangements also proved that he had spent a lot of thought. "Thank you, Mr. Albert, you really gave me a surprise." "Nothing, isn't it our duty as a salesperson to satisfy our customers?" Albert smiled indifferently. If Kinzu is satisfied, Douglas will be satisfied. If a Douglas is satisfied, that is a great achievement. Thanks to Fengxiai, Concert Kid, Mulindeo, Sangkam, and several other big names for their support. Liu can't reply to the Kid in book review area. The Book Friends group is in the introduction, 332189705. Liu Villa welcomes all book friends to join. Today is the first update. Chapter 169 Return to the Ranch. Old 3, did you buy a yacht? Looking at the 40 to 50 meter long boat in front of him, Li Yang's first reaction was that Kinzu bought a yacht, although the boat in front of him looked a little different from the yachts on TV. Kinzu looked at the eldest brother speechlessly. "How can this look like a yacht? What's with your eyes? How can this look like a yacht?" Ironman looked at the eldest brother Liang with disdain. How can this look like a yacht? Can a yacht be this big? Resisting the urge to punch him in that fat face, Liang asked back. Then what do you say this is? This is obviously a cruise ship, okay? Have you ever seen such a big yacht? Puff Qinzhu almost spit out a mouthful of blood. Looking at Ironman's face full of certainty, he felt a deep sense of powerlessness. Qinzhu, this is a fishing boat, right? How did you think of buying a fishing boat? Zhu Mengyo couldn't stand the two of them playing tricks anymore, so she asked with a smile. Yes, this is a fishing boat. Doesn't my estate have a large fishing ground? I bought it to catch fish. What kind of yacht? Cruise ship? How can this compare with those high-end products? Qinzhu, who was hit hard by the two idiots, sighed deeply in his heart, saying that he still didn't have money. When he had money, he would buy 2 yachts, one for riding and one for watching. I envy you guys so much. However, although this is just a fishing boat, the people who have never been close to a boat are still very curious, so they all surrounded it. Mr. Clean, this is the temporary Captain Rex Reese this time. He and several crew members will be responsible for sending you to the ranch. When everyone was watching at the dock, Albert came over with a middle-aged white man. Qinzhu looked at the white man in front of him. He was about 40 years old, with a square face, a hooked nose, and a pair of bright eyes. Although he was close to middle age, he was muscular and his blonde hair was shaved into a flat head. He looked very energetic. Hello, I'm Qinzhu. Sorry to bother you this time. Reaching out his hand and shaking Rex's, Qinzhu smiled and said politely. He always respected people who made a living by their own ability. Rex was also looking at the young Asian man in front of him. He was only in his early 20s. He was wearing a black dress and looked quite handsome. Is this the boss's friend? So young. Although he was puzzled, Rex still said respectfully, It's okay. It's my honor to serve Mr. Clean. Smiling and waving his hands, Qinzhu said, Okay, everyone, don't be polite. Let's go and get on the boat. As he said that, he called out to the people who are still surrounding the fishing boat and taking pictures to send to their friends. However, he turned his head and looked not far away. Before everyone got on the boat, there was still a big guy who had to get on first. Waving his hand in the distance, Dale understood and started the night the 15th. With a roar, this land beast suddenly rushed onto the deck and stopped steadily on the deck. The huge impact shook the fishing boat. Qinzhu was a little nervous, fearing that there would be an accident. Mr. Clean, don't worry. If a fishing boat can't bear this weight and impact, how can it carry so many fish and still sail in the sea? Albert smiled and comforted Qinzhu. He knew that people who didn't understand the boat were like this. They always couldn't help but worry, as if the boat would sink if they moved a little more. Touching his nose, Qinzhu smiled embarrassedly. He was like this. He knew that the boat could definitely withstand it, but he still couldn't help but worry. Those were all green US dollars. How could he not worry? After Dale waved down and indicated that it was all done, Qinzhu said goodbye to Albert and took everyone on board one after another. Standing on the deck, looking at the people on the shore, Qinzhu waved to Albert. And with a long whistle, Albert on the shore personally lit the firecrackers. Crackle, crackle, crackle. Amid the crackle of firecrackers and the celebratory music of the shore band, the One slowly moved and began its maiden voyage. Qinzhu stood on the deck, watching the shore slowly become blurred, his heart filled with excitement. Man finally welcomed its first fishing boat, which means that in the near future, he will have his first income. Zhu Mengyo, who was taking pictures for Surui in the distance, saw Qinzhu standing on the side of the boat looking out, and walked over with a smile. Qinzhu, what's wrong? You look so excited, don't fall off. Ha, how could it be, Mengyo? This is my first fishing boat. I have such a large fishing ground, but I don't even have fishing tools. You don't know how anxious I was those days. Qinzhu turned his head to look at Zhu Mengyo, who was coming slowly, turned around and leaned against the side of the boat, and said with a smile. Those days were indeed like this. He had been at the seaside for so long, but he didn't have a boat to go out to sea, which made him depressed. Isn't that good? How long have you been in the United States? Take your time. Looking at the endless blue sea, Zhu Mengyo smiled and comforted Qinzhu, and then took him to take pictures. It would be a pity to waste such a beautiful scenery. Old 3, come and take a picture for me. Ironman finally got the chance this time and got into the driver's seat of the night the 15th. After a glance, he found that Qinzhu was the only idle person, so he hurriedly shouted. Although he was a little fat, he was also a man. There was no man who didn't love cars, especially such wild and domineering cars. Looking at the resentful eyes of Liang and Li Qiang, Qin Zhu knew what they meant. However, he shrugged helplessly at the two of them, and Qin Zhu still picked up the camera to take pictures of Wang Ming. After all, he had to take care of single dogs first, so you should just stay with your wives. Looking at the fat man posing in different shapes in the spacious cab, Liang was so angry that his teeth itched, but he was a step late and was beaten by this dead fat man. He also wanted to touch the domineering car. "What are you doing? Take some pictures." Seeing Liang's dazed look, Lan, who had been posing for a long time, got angry. "Oh, here you come on, smile, click." Qin Zhu no longer had time to care about the animals who were taking pictures over there. Because Zhu Mengyo came to him with a sweet smile and said gently, "Qin Zhu, come and take some pictures for us." Okay, Qin Zhu smiled and agreed. What the animals thought was a hard job was a good job for him. You ask why? Do you need any other reason to appreciate a beautiful woman openly? Ahem, don't think too much, it's just pure appreciation, Qin Zhu swears, really. It's like an artist appreciating a perfect work. Thanks to 10-year-old Bug, 10,000 years he showered, and several big rewards and support, the second update today. Chapter 170 Arrival at the Ranch, Additional Update 1, Deki no. One was heading towards Boston along the coastline. On the way, Qin Zhu had called Will and told him the approximate time and asked him to prepare. After playing for a while and browsing their moments, the girls on the boat were a little bored. Looking at the sea and the sky, they would feel very lonely after a long time. Fortunately, no one was seasick, which was the most gratifying thing for Qin Zhu. He didn't think about this before boarding the ship. He only thought about it when the ship started and he felt a little dizzy. If someone came here to travel with great enthusiasm, and he made them dizzy and went back, he would be scolded to death by these animals in the future. After a quick glance, seeing Zhu Mengyo lying on the side of the ship looking out at the sea, Qin Zhu handed the camera in his hand to Wang Ming, and walked over to say with concern, "Mengyo, you are tired, I will take you inside to rest for a while, there is satellite TV in the room." "Okay, I'm a little tired." With a soft reply, Zhu Mengyo called Surui and a few girls together, and followed Qin Zhu into the living room in that cabin. "Wow, Qin Zhu, this place is decorated so luxuriously, are you fishing or using it for vacation?" Lin Zhu stood in the living room, looking at the room decorated no worse than the 5-star hotel suite she stayed in yesterday, and exclaimed in exaggeration. Spreading his hands, Qin Zhu said helplessly, "There is no way, I am too familiar with the boss of this shipping company, he insisted on decorating the fishing boat into a cruise ship for me." Looking at Qin Zhu who was taking advantage of him with contempt, Lin Zhu directly ignored this guy, and pulled Zhao Qian to sit on the sofa. Lan and Daisy looked at each other, smiled and lay down on the sofa with Surui. The two of them are getting along better with Surui now. There's satellite TV up there. If you're bored, you can go check it out. I won't bother you anymore. I'll come and call you when we get there. He rubbed his nose. No one was cooperating. He couldn't pretend anymore. Qin Zhu shrugged at Zhu Mengyo and could only return to the deck in frustration. "Third brother, your car is really great. You must show it off to me when we get to the ranch." The eldest brother finally got the chance to sit in the driver's seat. While the fourth brother was taking pictures of him, he yelled at Qin Zhu who came out. Okay, no problem. I can hear you, big brother. You don't have to speak so loudly." Rubbing his ears, Qin Zhu looked at the eldest brother in frustration. Could it be that people from the northeast can't have a softer voice? His voice has not changed since the day he entered school. Ignoring Qin Zhu's complaints, Liang looked at Lao Si with great interest and said, "Come on, Lao Si, come up, I'll take a few photos for you, remember to upload them to your profile picture, and shock those bastards to death." Qin Zhu walked to Wang Ming's side, accompanied him, raised his head at a 45-degree angle, and looked up at the sky. After about half an hour, when Qin Zhu felt that his neck was about to collapse, Rex finally came to rescue him. "Mr. Clean, we have arrived in Boston, and the fishing grounds are just ahead." Qin Zhu suddenly changed from looking up to looking straight ahead, which scared Rex who had just come over. "Okay, I'll notify the guys at the ranch and ask them to mark it." 10 minutes later, the Tycoon no. One finally slowly approached the ranch dock while Qin Zhu was in a state of fear. Listening to the creaking sound coming from the dock, Qin Zhu was really worried that it would not be able to withstand the pressure generated by the huge ship when it docked. Fortunately, Will's assurance was trustworthy. Although it creaked, it stood there safely until the fishing boat stopped and lowered the escalator. As soon as the escalator was lowered, Will waved his hand behind him, and John lit the firecrackers left over from Kinzu's move. He called out several women who were watching a popular American TV series from the fishing boat's bedroom. Kinzu led everyone to get off the boat first amid the sound of crackling firecrackers. If it weren't for the way they look, I would have thought this was China. Bangman looked at the firecrackers that were still crackling at the dog, and looked at Kinzu speechlessly. You haven't forgotten your family's traditions even when you've gone abroad. He ignored Wang Ming's complaints. Whatever, I am traditional. If you get all this inexplicably, you have to be traditional too. He gestured to Dale, and Dale got on the Night the 15th. At Will's gesture, the Night the 15th suddenly rushed onto the dock. Listening to the constant creaking sound of the dog, Kinzu moved up the important task of repairing the dock on his schedule. Looking at Will and John on the dock, Kinzu introduced everyone to each other. After all, they will stay at the ranch for a few days, so he can take care of them in case anything happens. Wow, Kinzu, the quality of your beach is too good, right? It's better than those beaches in tourist resorts. As soon as she walked off the dock, Suruli exclaimed at the large stretch of white sand. Yes. The quality of this beach is really good, much better than the beach in the scenic spot I visited last time. Bangman bent down and grabbed a handful of fine sand, and gently squeezed it in his hand. Ha, there are so many good things in the ranch. Let's go to the villa and put down our luggage. Kinzu smiled proudly. This beach is also his proudest place. He is preparing to get a parasol and a lounge chair. When the time comes, he can sleep on the lounge chair, drink freshly squeezed juice, and have a few bikini beauties. Life will be perfect. But it's still a bit far to think about those things now. Kinzu led everyone to the door of the villa. Along the way, several people's cameras and mobile phones kept taking pictures of the ranch. Looking at the swimming pool and the rockery and flowing water in front of the villa, Bangman was a little confused and said, "Damn, third brother, are you living in a tourist area? Even the rockery waterfall has come out." Kinzu curled his lips and said, "What's this? You haven't seen where the real rich live. That's called luxury. And now this is just the front. The back is more beautiful than here." Even Zumengyu and Suruli were a little surprised. They were considered wealthy people in China, but compared with the wealthy people abroad, their life enjoyment seemed to be much worse. "Rich brother, please support me. I will live here and will not leave in the future." Bangman rushed forward and hugged Kinzu, his voice was so disgusting. "Get out of the way, as long as your father doesn't come to kill you, you can live here until you are old." Kinzu teased, looking at the fat man with a teasing look. Hearing this, the fat man immediately wilted, just like an eggplant hit by frost, wilting. Kinzu and the eldest brother laughed. Everyone knew the temper of the fat man's father. Everything was easy to talk about. What he cared most about was the inheritance of the industry and the continuation of future generations. When the fat man was still in school, he was arranging a blind date for him. "Thank you for your support. Today is the third update. I don't know how to be strong. I rely on you to hold on." Chapter 171 The Raid of the Harpy Eagle. As soon as the gate of the villa was opened, Daha and Xiaohe, who heard the noise inside, rushed out of the house, wagging their tails. As soon as they came out, they saw so many people at the door, and the two little guys were obviously a little confused. After a moment of shock, the two little guys did not retreat, baring their teeth and making a low roar of woohoo. Daha pressed his body down, looking as if he was about to pounce on them. "Okay, Daha and Xiaohe, these are all friends, be quiet." Kinzu walked up and touched the heads of the two loyal idiots with a smile. They can't even bite a rabbit to death, but they know how to pretend. As soon as he calmed the little guy down, two sharp eagle cries came from above his head. Kinzu looked up at the sky and saw two harpy eagles circling in the air. Haha's snow-white hair exploded, and his entire flat face no longer looked cute, but a little ferocious. He also made a low-altitude dive, looking as if he was about to launch an attack. "Ah, Kinzu, why is there an eagle here? It's coming down." Suruli looked at the eagle in the sky, which seemed to be flying towards her, and screamed in fear. Liang and Bangman quickly surrounded everyone in the middle, while Wang Xiao and Li Kaiyang protected the other side. Looking at the eagle that had returned to the air, they all looked as if they were facing a great enemy. Kinzu was also frightened by the two guys. He knew the reason. The two guys thought that bad guys had come and wanted to rush down to save him. He quickly whistled at the sky and calmed down the two guys who were about to explode. Seeing that Ha gradually calmed down, Kinzu breathed a sigh of relief. Turning his head, Kinzu first calmed down Zumengyo, who was hiding behind her and was frightened and pale, and then looked at the people who were frightened. He said apologetically, "Don't be nervous. This is my pet. It won't hurt anyone." "No way. A pet? Really? This is a pet? What? This is a pet? It won't hurt anyone." Everyone raised their heads in surprise. Wanming and Suruli exclaimed at the same time. However, the difference was that Wanming's tone was obviously filled with disbelief and envy, while Suruli's tone was filled with disbelief and anger. Her emotions were a little confused. "You said it was a pet, okay, I believe it. But you said it wouldn't hurt anyone." Recalling the sharp claws and the somewhat ferocious eagle beak that Ha had revealed when he pounced just now, Suruli would never believe that it wouldn't hurt anyone. "Are you alright? Come on, hurry into the house." Decisively changing the subject, Kinzu took Zumengyo's hand and called everyone into the villa. Zumengyo breathed a sigh of relief. She was also very scared just now. Looking at her best friend who was frightened and her face turned a little blue, she walked up to her and pulled her into the villa. "What's wrong? Boss, what happened?" At this time, Eva ran out of the room after hearing the noise. She looked at the people who were still in shock and asked in surprise. "It's okay. Go make some coffee and prepare some fruits." Kinzu led everyone to the living room and instructed Eva next to him. Because they had prepared themselves in advance, everyone was not surprised by Eva's appearance. In addition, Wanming was still in shock, so he didn't care whether this foreign girl was pretty or not. Looking at Kinzu expectantly, Wanming asked, "I say, third brother, is that really your pet? What kind of eagle is that?" "Say a falcon." "No, it's a harpy eagle. Have you heard of it? It's another name for a horned eagle." Kinzu picked up the coffee and handed it to Zumengyo next to him, answering casually. "Harpy eagle. It's the largest eagle in the world, and its single combat power is even better than that of a golden eagle." Wanming opened his mouth in surprise. If that was the case, it would be terrible if he was really scratched by this beast just now. "Yeah, the last time I saw them, they were fighting with golden eagles, but they were outnumbered and lost. It seems that they are not much stronger." Kinzu said a little depressed. "The last time 3 golden eagles besieged him, he took them down. It seems that they're really not that strong. So, these 2 eagles are really raised by you. But didn't you just come to the United States?" Liang was a little puzzled. He knew the happy eagles. Judging from their size, they were obviously not young birds. Could it be that the third guy subdued 2 adult eagles? Thinking of this, Liang shook his head violently. It was impossible. His grandfather had raised eagles before. He heard his grandfather say that it is best to raise eagles from a young age. It is very difficult to subdue an adult eagle, let alone a pair of adult eagles. Kinzu, a novice who has never raised an eagle, would not believe that he could subdue 2 adult eagles in a short time. "Yes, I raised them. Last time I went hunting in the mountains, I saw them being besieged by several golden eagles and injured, so I brought them back. After they recovered, they stayed here and refused to leave." Looking at Kinzu's innocent face, Liang wanted to take off his shoes and throw them in his face. "Okay, stop it, you guys, you really scared me today. Why are they so aggressive? What if they hurt others?" Zumengyo looked at the 2 of them and interrupted with a smile. "No, they are usually very well behaved. Today, maybe because there are too many of us, they thought they were bad guys." Kinzu explained with a smile, looked at Suruhi who seemed to have recovered, and asked, "How is it, Lawyer Su, are you okay? You are still afraid of a bird?" What do you think?" "I was scared to death. Why do I feel that it targeted me?" "Did you instruct it?" Looking at Kinzu suspiciously, "Since it is this guy's pet, it can't be his instigation, right?" Rolling his eyes, Kinzu said speechlessly, "How can your eagle be so smart that it will scratch whoever it is asked to scratch? Then why is it staring at me? This girl is loved by everyone, there is no reason." "Yes, everyone loves me, but birds don't love me." "Kinzu, I will fight with you today. PFFT, cough cough." Linzu was drinking coffee, and she burst out laughing at the conversation between the 2. She coughed a few times. When she looked up, she saw that the 2 were staring at her. Linzu shrank her neck and said embarrassedly, "It's okay. You continue. The coffee is a little hot." Speechlessly looking at the cute Lin Zhu, Qin Zhu called Eva to come over and clean up, and Lin Zhu hurried to help clean up. I think it may be because your clothes are too conspicuous. Seeing that the two wanted to continue to fight, Zhu Mengyo quickly interrupted them. After pulling Surui to sit down, she pointed to the bright red clothes on her and explained. Thank you to Musical Boy for the reward of 500 starting coins, and thank you to Fengxiai for the reward support. Today is the first update, and a new week has begun. Please recommend and reward support. Chapter 172 Leather Arm Guards Clothes. Surui looked down at her outfit. Today she was wearing a bright red dress, a pair of red high-heeled sandals, and long brown hair. She couldn't help but exude a queen-like demeanor. She looked up at everyone's clothes. They were either white, black, or beige. It seemed that it was really like that. Isn't that true? Will it come back when we go out later? Surui asked fearfully. She was really afraid that she would be spotted by the eagle as soon as she went out. No, let's go. Put your luggage upstairs. I'll take you to see Haha and Pape. Qin Zhu said, stood up, pulled up the pink suitcase, and walked upstairs. On the second floor, Qin Zhu assigned rooms to several people. The eldest family had one room, the fourth family had one room, Lin Zhu and Zhou Kaiyan had one room, Wang Xiao and the second child had one room, and Zhu Mengyu and Surui had one room. Looking at everyone said they had no objection. So they went back to their rooms to put their luggage. Back in the room, Surui looked at Zhu Mengyu, who was smiling, and said a little depressed. Yo, he has 2 foreign girls around him now, don't you care? Why should I care? Didn't he say that they're nannies and bodyguards? Looking at Surui strangely, Zhu Mengyu smiled faintly. Oh my god, you are simply blinded by love. Surui lay back and fell on the soft big bed, looking at her best friend speechlessly. Zhu Mengyu smiled, said nothing, picked up her clothes and put them in the closet. In her own situation, she was no longer qualified to ask for anything. As soon as Qin Zhu arrived in the garden, Eva came over with something made of leather in her hand. What's wrong? Boss, this is the arm guard I made for you. It's made of buffalo leather. Try it to see if it fits you. As she said that, Eva handed over the leather arm guard in her hand. Sitting up from the recline, Qin Zhu reached out to take the leather arm guard and said with a smile, so soon. After taking the arm guard, Qin Zhu looked at it carefully. It was a thickened arm guard made of bison leather, with several delicate patterns coiled on it with silk thread, which looked very beautiful. Qin Zhu tied the arm guard on his left arm, stood up and waved his arm. He didn't feel any discomfort, but his arm felt a little heavier than usual, but the impact was not great. Haha, Eva, thank you for your trouble. This arm guard is very good. I like it very much. Qin Zhu smiled and thanked Eva, waved his arms a few more times, feeling very satisfied. I'm glad you like it. Then I'll go downstairs first. With that, Eva turned and walked downstairs. When Eva disappeared from sight, Qin Zhu raised his hand to his mouth and blew a loud and long whistle towards the sky with a few white clouds floating. Before the whistle fell, a loud eagle cry came from the distant sky, as if responding to Qin Zhu. In the blink of an eye, a dark cloud floated in the empty sky. Qin Zhu looked up and saw Haha and Pape flapping their wings and circling above his head. Raising his arm, Qin Zhu blew another quick whistle at Haha. The whistle was short and sharp, and sounded a little harsh. Haha seemed to understand what Qin Zhu meant. It circled in the sky again and then slowly fell down. Its 2 sturdy claws firmly grasped the cowhide arm guard on Qin Zhu's arm. Qin Zhu breathed out softly. He was really afraid that it would be like last time. The feeling of being pierced into the flesh by the sharp claws was not fun at all. He raised his arm to try it out. Well, it was not very heavy. He should be fine if he carried it for an afternoon. Wow, third brother. So cool. Come, let me take a picture for you. As soon as Wang Min arrived at the Sky Garden, before he had time to appreciate the surrounding scenery, he saw a harpy eagle with a body of almost 1 meter long, slowly landing on Qin Zhu's arm wrapped in cowhide. Cooperating with Wang Min, Qin Zhu posed in several poses. After a series of click sounds, the fat man came to Qin Zhu with a licking face and said in a flattering tone, "Third brother, no, third brother, look, can you lend me this eagle for a while, just for a while?" Qin Zhu pushed his arm forward, and Haha also cooperated by suddenly opening the huge wings, and the airflow directly turned the fat man's hair into a chicken coop. Frightened and shivering, Wang Min took a few steps back and looked at Qin Zhu with resentful eyes, "Not playing like this. Ignoring the fat man's resentful look, Kinzu pretended to be helpless and said, "You also saw that this guy doesn't get close to strangers." It's not that Kinzu didn't want to give it to him, it's really that Haha is not very obedient. He is better. If he accidentally hurts him, he will not be able to explain it. "What are you doing?" "Wow, third brother, you are so cruel, come on, take a few more pictures." The eldest brother Liang took Wan to clean up the sleeping place. After sighing at the hugeness of the room, he went out to the balcony to gather. Who knew that as soon as he stepped into the balcony, he was attracted by the scene in front of him. He came to Kinzu with his wife and strongly requested to take a photo. Soon, Zumengyu and the other girls and the fourth brother also came over, ready to take a closer look at the culprit who had just tossed them so hard. Who knew that as soon as they came up, the girls were fascinated by the scenery in front of them. There was an ancient pavilion in the open-air garden, and outside the pavilion were hundreds of flowers in full bloom, colorful and fragrant. Moreover, standing in the open-air garden, you could just overlook the sea and sky in the distance. The blue sea is like a silver plate, floating quietly on the horizon. Looking downstairs, a blue stone road leads directly to the seaside. The roadside is covered with lush grass, and the grass is full of strange rocks. Rockery waterfalls can be seen at any time. Kinzu, no wonder you must come to the United States to be a rancher. It turns out that the life of a rancher is so comfortable. Looking at Kinzu, who was standing on his arm with a flat-headed harpy sculpture exuding a middle school atmosphere, Zumengyu sighed at Kinzu's original decision. Yes, remember what someone said at the beginning, yearning for the days of picking chrysanthemums under the eastern fence, leisurely seeing the southern mountains. What about now? Surui clicked her tongue a few times, looked at Kinzu with a teasing look, and continued. Now I have nothing to do but walk the dog, play with the eagle, eat delicious food, live in a luxurious villa, and have beautiful women by my side. This is a good life. Landlord Keen, do you still yearn for picking chrysanthemums under the eastern fence? Waving his hand, Kinzu looked at Surui, smiled cunningly, and said, Lawyer Su, don't you know? This is the correct interpretation of this poem. Thank you Fenxi for the reward. Thank you my farm has a fish for the 500 starting coins reward. Thank you book friends for the recommendation votes. Thank you everyone. If there is anything wrong with Liloon, you can point it out, but I hope that the masters will pay attention to their quality. We are all civilized people, so it is really unnecessary. Si est escuchando esta novela en un canal distinto a mundo fanfic novelas, significat lo descarga and y subir en cines fuerzos invitamos cordialmente a visitar nuestro canal. Mundo fanfic novelas all encontras la versión original de esta historia y podrás explorar muchas otras novelas de diversos narradores. Te esperamos para sumergirte en un mundo de novelas incredibles. Chapter 173 Preparing to go to sea. Surui looked at Kinzu, who was full of pride, speechlessly, revealing an expression of being defeated by you. She murmured, the ancients were not lying to me. A shameless person is invincible. Although her voice was low, it was loud enough for Kinzu to hear. Kinzu's face suddenly turned black. Just as the few people were laughing and making noises, Eva came up from downstairs again, looked at the few people laughing and making noises, and said to Kinzu, Boss, John is waiting for you downstairs. Kinzu agreed and came downstairs. Looking at John sitting on the sofa in the guest room, he smiled and said, John, what's wrong? Is there anything going on at the ranch? Taking a sip of coffee, John smiled and said, Boss, it's nothing serious, it's just about changing the grass on the ranch. When are you going to start? Kinzu thought for a while and said, hurry up, you guys harvest the grass first, and I'll ask them to come and install the sprinkler system. Okay, then let's start harvesting grass tomorrow. Seeing Kinzu nod, John stood up and prepared to leave. He just came to confirm his idea. By the way, John, ask all the idle cowboys to come over in the evening. My friend just came to the ranch today and is going to open a welcome patient. Seeing John want to leave, Kinzu smiled and informed him. Okay, boss. Seeing John open the door and walk out, Kinzu took out his phone and called Will, who was at the dock. Boss, this is Will. Will was still so concise and clear. After one sentence, he waited for Kinzu to speak. Well, Will, have you seen the deck? No. One? How is it? Can it be driven out to sea? Kinzu asked with concern. He didn't want to buy a boat but no one knew how to drive it. Of course, boss, don't worry. Let us get familiar with it for half an hour. There will be no problem going out to sea. Will said confidently, patting his chest, because he was in the cockpit now. Well, you guys get familiar with it first, and we will go out to sea in a while. After hanging up the phone, Qinzu went upstairs again. At this time, Li Yang and Wang Ming were teasing Haha with curiosity. Haha, without the owner around, couldn't attack people at will, so he looked a little embarrassed. He raised his hand and waved, and Haha spread his wings and came to Qinzu's arm quickly, and began to show off his power and make eagle cries at the two of them. Old third, let's discuss it again. Lend me the eagle to play with it for a while, just for a while. The fat man still didn't give up, and came to Qinzu again to pester him to play with the eagle. Looking at him helplessly, Qinzu said, "Second brother, this is like my child. How can I lend it to you to play with? Besides, what's fun about it?" Wang Ming was choked by this reason. He shrugged his shoulders in dismay and couldn't speak. Qinzu felt a little sorry. His words were a little inhumane. He also knew that this guy just wanted to show off and act cruel, so he said, "How about this? I'll let it stay on your arm and take a photo with you. Is that okay?" Nodding happily, Wang Ming patted Qinzu on the shoulder and said with a smile, "Brother, you are still loyal. I'll just take a photo with you." He didn't mean anything else. It was just the first time he saw an eagle so close, and he was a little curious, and he wanted to show off to his friends. He raised his hand to let Haha fly first. Qinzu took off the arm guard and put it on Fatty. He whistled at Haha and signaled it to land on Fatty's arm. Who knew that after blowing a few times, Haha still refused to come down, and the sound became lower and lower, more and more shrill. Qinzu almost felt that he was a piece of shit after hearing it. Wang Ming was also a little scared by Haha's cry, and quickly took off the arm guard and returned it to Qinzu, and said anxiously, "What's wrong with it? Can't I just leave it without it? Hurry up and make it stop barking, it will make people scared." Qinzu was also a little panicked. After hurriedly putting the arm guard back on, he whistled at Haha twice, and Haha slowly calmed down. After circling twice, under Qinzu's frightened gaze, it slowly landed on his arm and rubbed its head against Qinzu's face gently. Qinzu then breathed a sigh of relief and slowly put down his somewhat tense heart. Reaching out and gently stroking this guy's head, he was a little bit amused. "Alas! Third brother, your bird has become a monster, right?" The fat man sighed in disappointment, and this time he didn't bring up that topic just now. He looked at Haha with a strange look in his eyes. Is this guy still a bird? Maybe it thought I didn't want it anymore, so it overreacted. Qinzu smiled awkwardly. He didn't expect this to happen. "Okay, second brother, don't make things difficult for the bird. Let's discuss where to go next." Li Yang saw that the atmosphere was a bit dull, and quickly smiled and changed the subject. Looking at the people looking at the sea, Qinzu smiled and asked, "How do you feel? Are you tired? Do you want to rest for a while?" "No, we came here to have fun. Third brother, just tell me what you have planned next." Everyone shook their heads to show that they had no problem. The fat man put aside his lost emotions and directly asked everyone's thoughts. "Well, in order to welcome you, I'm going to open a patient tonight." Qinzu paused here, and after seeing everyone's expectant expressions, he chuckled and continued. "However, the ranch has nothing but beef, so I'm going to go out to sea to catch some fish to improve the food. How about it?" Okay. Going out to sea to fish, this is good. I've never tried it before." To Qinzu's surprise, the first person who agreed was Surui, the lawyer. In fact, since they met, Qinzu always thought that Surui would be the same as her appearance, mature and capable, and should be a strong woman. As a result, after seeing her again, Qinzu found that everything was fake and deceptive. The mature, charming, noble and dignified image of a strong woman in China was all pretended by this girl. This trip abroad exposed her true nature, becoming lively and active, and looking like a curious baby about everything. The mature and steady image of a female lawyer she showed in China collapsed here. Except for her sharp tongue, she was like a completely different person. "Well, that's good. This is good. Hurry up, I will definitely catch a big fish for you to see." Wang Ming immediately echoed him. Fishing is his favorite. Li Yang and Li Kaiang also nodded in agreement. Qinzu glanced around and was depressed to find that no one objected. Could it be that these guys are all fishing enthusiasts? Thanks to Xiao Langzi for the reward of 1,024,500 starting coins. Thank you. First update today, please recommend and reward chapter 174 going out to sea. Qinzu stopped thinking about it. Since no one had any objections, what else was there to say? Let's go. He gently stroked Ha-Ha's smooth white feathers with his hand. Kinzu lifted his arm up, and it understood and kicked its strong legs hard, spread its wings and rushed into the air, and continued to circle in the air with Pape. When he came downstairs, Kinzu greeted Daha and Xiaohe who were playing around, and fed some berries to the little squirrel that appeared out of nowhere. Then he prepared to take everyone out. Kinzu, are you going to open a zoo? When can you get 2 lions and tigers? That way it will be more like a zoo. Looking at Kinzu feeding the squirrel that appeared out of nowhere, Lin Zhu smiled and teased. Yes, Kinzu, you can get a few more monkeys, and bears, giraffes, etc. That will be more perfect. Following Lin Zhu's words, Surubi also expressed her own opinion, causing everyone to laugh. Little squirrel Jerry was somewhat puzzled by the laughter of the crowd, and thought that everyone wanted to eat it, so he grabbed a blueberry in front of him and gave it to Kinzu in a flattering manner. After patting Jerry's little head, Kinzu stuck the blueberry back into his hand, looked at everyone and said with a smile, "See, my little baby still knows how to care for people. What's wrong with opening a zoo? Hey, Lao-san, how come your squirrel is so smart?" Lan stared at Jerry in surprise, then turned her head to look at Liang and said, "Do you think it is smarter than the squirrel you bought? It seems a little bit." "Lao-san, what kind of squirrel is yours?" Liang listened to his wife's words and stared at Jerry in surprise. Seeing it holding the blueberry and eating it with juice flowing out of its mouth, he felt that it seemed to be more clever than his own squirrel. Yes, it was more clever. Just like the eagle just now, it seemed to understand what people meant. Unlike his own stupid squirrel, it couldn't eat well. Ignoring the boss's question, Kinzu explained to Eva and handed the little squirrel to her. Then he looked at the curious people and said, "This is an ordinary North American red squirrel. As for why it is so smart, I don't know." Then he led the 2 idiots out of the door. Everyone was left looking at little Jerry with curiosity. When Kinzu and his friends arrived at the dock, Will had already prepared everything, including fishing rods, parasols, baits, etc. On the fishing boat, waiting to set off. "Boss, where are you going to fish today?" Will saw Kinzu coming and asked after greeting him. "Just go out to sea, I don't know where is suitable. Just pick a place." Kinzu didn't know anything about these. After telling Will to make arrangements, he took everyone on the fishing boat that was docked at the dock and emitting dazzling light in the sun. When everyone got on the boat, Will followed and walked directly to the cabin. It would be better for him to control this fishing boat today, after all, it was his first time going out to sea. Simon and 2 crew members behind him also came up and put away the escalator. With the not-so-strong sunlight in the blue sky and the gentle sea breeze, the Tycoon one issued a loud whistle, slowly left the shabby little dock of the ranch, and set off towards the depths of the boundless sea. Kinzu opened the parasol on the deck and asked everyone to sit down. He smiled and said, "Take a break first. We will probably be there soon. Let's see who is lucky enough to catch the first fish today. That must be me. You know, I'm a fishing expert. I'm fiddled with the fishing gear that Simon sent over." After hearing what Kinzu said, he stood up without hesitation. "Not necessarily. Why do I feel that the first fish today will definitely be caught by us?" Liang did not sit under the parasol, but hugged his wife and leaned against the side of the boat. For him, the sunlight was not strong enough now, and he didn't feel it at all. "Would you like to make a bet? Whoever loses will cook at noon, and we will use the fish we caught." The fat man was a little unconvinced, thinking that I have been in the fishing forum for decades, and I am afraid of you. Looking at the 2 people who happily reached the bed, Kinzu curled his lips beside him. "With me here, how can you get the first place?" The 2 little huskies were curious about everything because it was their first time on a boat. They ran around on the deck and looked particularly lively. The big husky was also naughty and clung to the side of the boat, sticking his head out, like a curious baby. Reaching out to pull this naughty guy back, Kinzu laughed and scolded, "You little thing, you'll suffer if you fall down." The Tycoon one was moving at a constant speed in the vast ocean. Kinzu stuck his head out and looked back. The coastline was getting farther and farther away, and the outline of the ranch could no longer be seen clearly. About 10 minutes later, Simon walked out of the cab. "Boss, let's drop anchor in front. There are still many big fish in this area." Seeing Kinzu nod, Simon turned and shouted to the cabin, "Guys, come out to work." At the same time, the fishing boat was also slowly slowing down and soon stopped. Simon and his men worked together to throw the anchor into the water and fix the fishing boat. After everything was packed up, Kinzu shouted to the few people who were still chatting and laughing on the deck. "Hey, guys, we can start. Those who want to participate, go get the fishing gear." Hearing Kinzu's shout, the fat man quickly hugged the fishing rod he had chosen, pushed the fishing tackle box to everyone, and ran towards the side of the boat. After taking a closer look, Kinzu suddenly realized that Wang Ming was so good. He chose a Kevlar elastic fishing rod. Kinzu knew this fishing rod. When he went to the fishing tackle store to buy a fishing rod, he heard the store owner introduce it. It seemed very expensive. Walking forward, everyone has chosen their fishing rods, but most of them are made of ordinary fiberglass, and there is no Kevlar elastic one. Even Liang, who was known as a fishing master, only picked one made of carbon fiber, and was secretly happy holding the fishing rod. Reaching out to fiddle with the fishing tackle box for a few times, Kinzu was surprised to find that there were several Kevlar elastic fishing rods in it. These fishing rods were packed for him by Albert, and he was given a lot of fishing gear, which were all extra gifts. Originally thought to be some worthless gadgets, Kinzu did not expect that Albert would really get him some good things. He took out another Kevlar elastic fishing rod from it and said with a smile, "Boss, you call yourself a fishing master, don't you even know this kind of fishing rod? Thanks to Kai. Thanks love. The two big rewards and support. Thank you to Xiaowei Holdings 1024 for the reward of 2000 starting coins. Thank you." Chapter 175. The first fish. What is that? Is it better than my carbon fiber one? The boss said proudly, pointing at the fishing rod in his hand. Have you heard of Kevlar elastic fishing rod? Kinzu looked at the guy with sympathy and raised the fishing rod in his hand. The boss was stunned for a moment, and walked forward to take a closer look with some doubts. Without saying a word, he snatched the fishing rod from Kinzu's hand and stuffed his own fishing rod into Kinzu's hand. Being caught off guard by the boss's sudden attack, Kinzu was helpless and pointed to the fishing tackle box next to him. He said, "What are you doing? Isn't there another one over there?" In the end, the guy ignored him and went to the side of the boat with his wife to prepare for fishing. Shaking his head helplessly, Kinzu picked up a Kevlar elastic fishing rod again and walked towards the bow. He chose the 1.2 PE line for the fishing rod. In addition, nylon line or fluorocarbon line can be used. PE line is a tougher type of fishing line. The 1.2 caliber has a bearing capacity of over 100 pounds and can be used to catch small sharks. Of course, sea fishing is for catching big fish, so Kinzu chose this. The Tycoon 1 is a very advanced fishing boat. The side of the boat is equipped with a rod hanging machine, which is to put the fishing rod and reel seat on the machine. When a fish bites the hook, the machine will feel the tension of the fishing line and do preliminary automatic processing. Because of the sensitive response, the initial effect of catching fish is very good, but the machine is not as flexible as people in handling changes. So after catching the fish, people still have to handle it. Arriving at the front deck, seeing Zhu Mengyu and Surui frantically hanging the bait, Kinzu smiled and said, "Mengyu, do you want my help? Come, Kinzu, help us hang the bait, I'm so tired." Before Zhu Mengyu could speak, Surui threw the bait in her hand onto the deck and looked at Kinzu angrily. It seemed that Kinzu had caused her to fail to hang the bait. Kinzu was speechless, and a few black lines floated on his forehead. But he didn't say anything, because the ancients had said, only women and villains are difficult to raise. He picked up the bait on the side and helped them put it on. This bait was smeared with a blend of clove oil, fennel and sesame oil. It was specially given to them by the old fisherman for fishing. After putting on the bait, he also helped them throw the fish hook into the water, and then fixed the fishing rod on the rod hanging machine. Kinzu clapped his hands. "Okay, just keep an eye on it. It will remind you if a fish takes the bait." After saying that, he found a small stool for the two of them. Seeing them sitting down and looking at the sea, Kinzu came to the side and prepared to start working on his fishing rod. "Third brother, come on. I'm making a bet with the eldest brother on who can catch the first fish. Do you want to join?" Bangmin looked at the couple showing off their affection and felt extremely unbalanced. When he saw Kinzu coming over, he asked impatiently as if he had found a comrade in the organization. Kinzu was stunned. "How do we bet? Whoever loses will cook. It's a fair bet, don't you think?" Looking at the smug smile on the fat man's face, Kinzu couldn't help but want to hit him, so he smiled and said, "No problem, it's decided." As he said that, Kinzu put the bait on the hook. In order to avoid being accused of cheating, he used the same bait as everyone else. After putting it on, Qinzu threw the hook directly into the sea. Ban Ming, who was watching, curled his lips. He was fishing with such a level. Compared with Qinzu, a rookie, Ban Ming seemed much more skilled. When he threw the hook, he didn't just throw it down casually, but used the method of throwing the hook like mosquito hook fishing. Mosquito hook fishing is known as the most artistic fishing method. The bait used is a specially made artificial bait. When an old hand throws this bait out, it will fall in the air like a feather. From this, it can be seen that being able to use this bait throwing method must require very high skills, so this bait throwing method is often a way for old anglers to learn from each other. However, the fat man looked at the guy next to him who didn't even hold the fishing rod correctly, raised his head at a 45-degree angle to look up at the sky, and sighed pretentiously. Life is so lonely like snow. Damn, just halfway through the words, Ban Ming heard the sound of water splashing next to him. He looked down and couldn't help but burst out a swear word. It turned out that Qinzu had already started to reel in the line. As soon as the hook entered the water, before even a minute had passed, Qinzu felt the fishing rod in his hand sink slightly. He was delighted. A fish was caught so quickly. The fisherman's skills were amazing. Steadying his arms, Qinzu did not pull the hook up like a rookie. He tested the pulling force and found it was not strong. It should be a small fish, so he knew what he was doing. He first released the reel and let the fish run forward for more than 10 meters. Then he reeled in the reel and began to put pressure on it. After another 10 meters, Qinzu felt the tension of the fishing line greatly reduced, which meant that the fish was no longer strong. Since you have no strength, it's my turn. With a relaxed smile on his face, Qinzu began to retrieve the hook. Soon, a silvery white Atlantic cod was pulled onto the deck by Qinzu. This Atlantic cod was about 40 centimeters long, with a protruding upper jaw and prominent tentacles on the lower jaw. The lateral line bends at the pectoral fin, the distance of the dorsal area is less than 1/3 of the total length, and the body height is 1/5 of the body length. The body color is changeable, the color of the dorsal and upper parts of the body gradually changes from brown to green or gray, the abdomen fades to grayish-white, and the peritoneum is silver. Damn, Lao-san, what kind of shit luck did you have? A fish took the bait so quickly. You must have sent the bait directly to its mouth. Yes, that must be the case. Ban Ming comforted himself on the side. This is too depressing. Can he still have fun? Wow, Qinzu, you caught it so quickly. What kind of fish is this? It's not small. The fat man next to him hasn't recovered from the shock yet. Surui, who was a little bored on the other side, also noticed the situation here. She didn't care about her fishing rod, and trotted to Qinzu, curiously staring at the cod that was still jumping around on the deck. The cod on the deck just jumped to the place where Daha and Xiaohe were resting. Just now, these two guys were bored on the boat. Daha habitually wanted to draw a map to mark his own territory, but was caught by Qinzu and slapped twice on his little butt. Now the two brothers were licking their wounds and grievance. Now looking at the Atlantic cod still jumping around in front of them, Daha's temper came up all of a sudden. Damn, if I can't handle the master, can I not handle you? Without any hesitation, Daha rushed towards the jumping cod, so fast that Qinzu couldn't react. Today's first update, please recommend, reward and collect, Findiest capture much as great as Pelaga Hasta El Final. No SEO indeed all like Busgasms content to exclusive YXO in Medito. Subscribe news to Patreon. Recuerda, card like, subscription Odonaking nos anima continue. Great as a todos nos vemos en el próximo video.